Hello friends, quick heads up before we dive in. If you love true 911 horror, tap subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach more people. My name is Elena Ruiz. I worked nights at the Consolidated Dispatch Center for Polk County, Iowa, from 2013 to 2021. I was one of those calm voices you hear on your worst day. You don't call me when things are normal. You call me when it feels like the floor is swinging under your feet and you need someone to anchor you to something true. I used to be good at that. When the heaters kick on in our center, they rattle the ductwork and the whole room smells faintly metallic, like a hot penny under your tongue. The lights are soft, cool white panels that make you forget the sun exists. We sat in a gentle arc of consoles, each with 6 monitors, CAD, radio, call taking, mapping, YLI/ANI, and a running log of incidents. Through the glass wall to my left was the comms supervisor, and beyond that, the little break room with its humming vending machines and burnt coffee. There's always a hum in dispatch. It's like the room breathes. I'd been on the overnight 4 years when the first call from Mr. Bartlett popped up on my screen. It was February, the kind of wind that picks up powdered snow and flings it, and the roads had that gray crust that eats your tires' grip. I remember the time because I logged it later, 2:13. The ANI/ALI brought in the address before he spoke, 713 Ashbury, out on the eastern edge of Des Moines, where the old houses squat low and the lots are deep, and the map is a messy overlay of the 1920s grid and newer cul-de-sacs. 911, what's the address of the emergency? I said, routined into my bones. 713 Ashbury. The caller repeated, as if reading from a note. Male, elderly, breathy in a way that made me picture a robe. She's back. She's at the porch. Tell me your name. Frank, he said. Franklin Bartlett. She's humming again. My fingers coded the call, possible prowler. I toggled to CAD, typed quick. Elderly M reports F female on porch. Humming. Pause stalker. Then back to him. Okay, Franklin, I'm sending officers now. Stay with me on the line. Is she trying to get in? No, he said, voice going tight like a guitar string. She never tries. She just hums the same song. She hums it like she's washing dishes at the sink. She's wearing the blue dress again. Can you describe her? How old does she look? What color is her hair? There was a pause. The wind creaked against his eaves through his phone like a seesaw. She looks like my wife, he said. Except Helen's dead. I've had hallucination calls. Grief makes the air itself bend. We get folks with dementia who call 3 times an hour to report a burglar who is just a coat on a chair. But there was something in his voice that kept me steady. He wasn't frantic, not performative. He sounded genuinely inconvenienced, like a man whose porch light had burned out again. What's she humming, Mr. Bartlett? I kept him talking while I hit the radio pedal and toned out. Unit 12, Unit 14, copy at 10 to 96. Possible prowler, 713 Ashbury. RP elderly male reports female on porch humming. No attempt entry. Timeout 0217. The radio hissed and crackled. 12 copies en route. I saw the little icons on the map turn and point their triangles toward Ashbury. The song, he said softly. Always the same. Helen hummed when she cooked. Same rhythm. Same. It's like the way the sound hits the plates. You know? I understand, I said, though I didn't. The map showed me his house. Narrow, blue footprint, the rear alley like a scar. I want you to stay inside, Mr. Bartlett. Don't open the door. Where are you in the house? In the living room. Curtains are open. I can see her. Her hand on the post. The blue dress, like the Easter wee. He stopped himself. I told the boys last time. It's not neighbor kids. It's not those teenagers. She looks like my wife before she got sick. Just new. Okay, I said again. I've got officers almost there. Do you have any pets in the house? Had a dog. Daisy. She didn't like the humming. She died last fall. The breathy sound again, slow. I don't like the humming either. Unit 12 keyed up. Dispatch, 12 on scene. Copy, I answered. 12 on scene, 14 2 minutes out. Mr. Bartlett, I said into the phone, the officer is outside. Can you stay on the line with me? The officer might knock. No, he said. Don't knock. Don't you see her? I heard the radio before I understood his words. Unit 12's voice. Dispatch, 12. I've got a female on the front porch. Can you ask the RP if she's supposed to be here? I did not move. The room became very still. I watched the line of text on my screen like it might morph into something else. "Mr. Bartlett," I said, "the officer does see someone on your porch. Do you know who that is?" Silence. Long enough I thought the call had dropped. Then, "If it's Helen, she's not supposed to be there," he said. I kept my voice level. 12, approach with caution, I told the radio. RP states female resembles deceased wife. There was a click as Unit 14 came up. Dispatch, 14, arriving. The icon settled a block away. "Ma'am," Unit 12 said, the way officers speak to women at night when they keep their hands relaxed and their flashlights at an angle. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you live here?" A pause. Then, "Dispatch, subject is not responding. She's humming." The hairs on my arms stood up. It was nothing, just a note in a cold night. And it was everything, because it was the one thing Mr. Bartlett had said, and now an officer who had never met him was saying it too. 12, I said, "Careful, describe the subject." Another pause, and I heard wind like the one on the phone and the crunch of boots on old snow. White female, maybe late 50s, early 60s. Blue dress, barefoot. It's 10 degrees out here. She's looking straight ahead, not responding to loud verbal. The map icon for 14 moved up the block. My supervisor, Jenkins, stepped to my shoulder, drawn by the tone in my voice, or maybe by the fact that I had stopped typing. I never stopped typing. "Mr. Bartlett," I said, "the officers are there. Do not open the door. Do you understand?" "I understand," he said, small now. Then he whispered, "She wore that dress to my brother's wedding. There is a rhythm to a good call, and I had my fingers in it. Update, breathe, reassure, listen, update, breathe." Except then the radio cracked and the rhythm tripped. "Dispatch, 12, I'm going to put hands on. Stand by." "Copy," I said, because there is nothing else to say. There was a scuffle of sound on the open channel. The officers breathe harder when they're engaged, the air around them pulling in different, shorter measures. "Ma'am, I'm going to," then 12 again, "She's cold." "Jesus, she's cold." 12, is she responsive? "No," 12 said. Eyes open, fixed. Skin cold to the touch. Pulse, standby. Another beat. Negative pulse. But she's breathing. The humming, she's humming. I wrote that into CAD because what else do you do with a sentence like that? This job is about turning impossible sentences into manageable lines of plain text and hoping that if you stack enough of them, the world makes sense. We sent medics. They found nothing to treat. The woman hummed. The officers tried to warm her. The humming continued, steady and thin like a wire. Unit 12 radioed his name in that careful way you do when you're marking yourself to an event you don't want reassigned. "Dispatch, 12 will be 10 to 12. On scene. Stuck to whatever this was. Do you want me to disconnect?" I asked Mr. Bartlett eventually, after 10 minutes of the sound of wind and the hum moving through the phone into my ear like a thread through a needle. "Please don't," he said. "I want someone to hear it with me." There are a lot of things I typed after that. Hospital refusal. Supervisors on scene. Body cam noted. Medics cleared with no transport. The woman, if she was a woman, stopped humming when they tried to move her and began again when they stopped. She never looked at anyone. She didn't shiver. When they shined the flashlight across her eyes, the pupils didn't react. Could be cataracts, the medic said on an open mic, trying to give the world a shape. At 3:02, Unit 12 knocked on Mr. Bartlett's door and spoke to him face to face for the first time. His report would say, elderly Caucasian male, 84, widower, lives alone, no signs of dementia in conversation, oriented X4, neatly kept home, photos on mantle consistent with the description of the subject's clothing, blue dress, seen in a framed photo of a woman identified as decedent Helen Bartlett, D.O.D., 2011. The officers left when the humming stopped by itself, and the woman, if she was a woman, stepped down from the porch like someone being lowered by a crane, 1 inch at a time, and walked to the sidewalk. Unit 14 followed her for half a block, stopped when the radio crackled from the supervisor ordering "hold that," and then watched as the figure turned the corner and went out of sight. The call cleared. We all breathed. Jenkins clapped my shoulder. "Good work," he said softly, which is what supervisors say when there's nothing else to say. I didn't think that would be the beginning. If anything, I thought it was the end, The kind of weirdness that dispatchers tell each other in the break room a month later when the coffee tastes like cardboard and we need to remember the job has edges. The second call came 3 weeks later at 1:41. Same ANI/ALI. Same voice. The humming had returned, he said. The blue dress. The porch. I turned the porch light to blue when Daisy died. He told me then. Conversational, like we had been discussing the weather. It's supposed to mean support for police, I guess. I just liked how it made the snow look. She looks more real in the blue. I told him I was sending officers. He asked me not to. That was new. They can't do anything for her, he said. They just make it worse. They try to touch her, and she stops. Then when they leave, she starts again. I still need to send someone, I told him. For your safety. For mine, he said. She's not here for me. I don't get to indulge callers. Policy is policy. But I asked the responding units to stage 2 houses down and observe first. They watched a porch where a woman in a blue dress stood with her hand on the post and hummed a tune from a kitchen a half-century ago. Nothing dramatic happened that night. She hummed. He did not open the door. The officers recorded. The humming stopped at 2:18 exactly, and the blue light of his porch buzzed like a tired bee. They all left the scene, and I closed the call by daybreak and went home to my studio apartment that smelled like the neighbor's laundry soap and stared at the sink like it might sing. The third call didn't come from Mr. Bartlett. It came from a neighbor, a younger woman who had moved in 2 years ago and had 2 dogs and a Honda CR-V. She reported the same humming, now audible from the sidewalk. By then, word had drifted through the rank and file. The body cam videos, public records, if you know to ask, had been viewed more than once. People shared them like a party trick. Have you seen the humming woman? I watched them in the training room during a slow hour. The way the camera quivered when officers shifted their weight. The way the humming stayed steady no matter what. Nothing in training covers how to talk to the dead. We are very good at the living. We are very good at telling people how to bleed less. On the fourth call, the humming came from inside Mr. Bartlett's house. I still have the audio clip. Legally, we retained 7 years, but I made myself a copy because when something breaks the way you think about the world, you start keeping proofs for trial. You can hear him breathing. You can hear the furnace exhale, and then you can hear the sound, closer now, swelling then quieting like lips near a glass bottle. A tune with no words, thin and precise. A woman's mouth closed as she runs water over plates. She came in, Mr. Bartlett said, a little wonder, a little fear. She came in when I went to the bathroom. She's in the kitchen. Go to a room with a lock, I said immediately. Lock the door. I'm sending officers emergent. I stomped the radio pedal and felt the click in my foot like a joint cracking. All units, priority. Home intrusion at 713 Ashbury. RP state subject entered residence, while RP in bathroom. Subject female, H/W/F, blue dress, humming. RP is elderly. Sirens bloomed across the map. Mr. Bartlett, I said, tone so even I could have served it in a glass. Lock yourself in a room. Now, can you do that? Are you safe? Safer than I've been, he said, which was not the answer I expected. She's loading the dish rack. There are just 2 cups. My mouth flooded with the taste of pennies. Mr. Bartlett, get to a room. He didn't. He set the phone down, this old man who could not run, and he walked toward the kitchen. I know because the phone recorded the steps and the little involuntary groan knees make when they stand up. He rounded the doorway, and his breath shortened, and he said, like a man coming home from a war and finding bread on the table, Helen. The humming stopped. You can hear the clatter of a ceramic mug bumping a plate. Don't touch her, Mr. Bartlett, I said, because that's what the policies say, and because I could not conceive of what happens if your hands pass through. He laughed, shocked small. She touched me, he said. Unit 12 and 14 arrived within 90 seconds. The door was locked from the inside. They forced the back door in, solid, mid-century wood that splintered like ribs. I kept Mr. Bartlett on the line until the officers' voices filled his kitchen and the sound of the humming lifted like a curtain in a breeze and went away. We took him to the hospital that night for observation, but he signed himself out in the morning, stubborn, embarrassed. An officer stayed with him for 3 hours, sitting in his overwarm living room and drinking tea a neighbor brought over, while I typed and retyped my notes, hating each sentence. Jenkins printed the body cam transcript, and set it on my desk like paper could anchor this. "Read it," he said. "So we're all talking about the same thing." In the footage, Mr. Bartlett is small but straight-backed. He looks, somehow, proud and ashamed at the same time. He puts 2 mugs in the sink, even though he is alone. The blue porch light glows in the corner of the frame through the window like a low moon. And then he died. That's not the part that's supposed to scare you. People die. He died in his own bed at 4:06 a.m. on a Tuesday in April. No foul play. Old men do that. He had a tidy will in a file folder marked Helen. He had an antique clock that had not worked since 2011. He had stacks of cookbooks with penciled notes in a woman's hand. His niece flew in from Tucson and dissolvingly cried when she found the picture of the blue dress. We cleared the humming. Nothing further to do. The call type doesn't exist. Some officers will tell you they have a drawer in their brains for the supernatural. I don't. Mine is all man-made. I wanted it to be something with fingerprints, something you could roll ink over and match to something else. The house went on the market. A young couple bought it. Megan and Lucas, social worker and HVAC tech, respectively. The Zillow listing said charming, 2-bed, 1 bath, original built-ins, deep lot, and did not say porch where something held the corner post and sang. For 3 weeks after they moved in, the radio was quiet. I started to think maybe the thing had tied itself to Frank and left with him into whatever place is shaped like kitchens and wind and tea. Then my phone rang. Private line. It was Lucas. He had the number because I had given it to him when I stopped by to bring a casserole like a woman much older than myself. I told myself I was doing due diligence, community engagement, but the truth is I had wanted to see the kitchen in daylight. I had wanted to see if it looked like a room where humming could happen. "Is this Elena?" he asked. I heard tools clatter in the background. I didn't know who else to call. The thing from the porch is in the basement. I put my hand over my keyboard, a small gesture like a prayer. "Tell me exactly what you're seeing," I said. "Not seeing," he said. "Hearing. And finding. We're tearing out the old shelves." The previous owner built these weird little cabinets into the cinder block. I thought it was for canned goods. But there were, those little things people leave in graves? Coins, crosses, dried flowers that turn into paper? He swallowed. They're in the cabinet. Stacked, like someone left them in there on purpose. And there's fabric. Blue. "What kind of blue?" "Old blue," he said. "Like a dress someone wore when they were young and wanted to be seen." I went to the house off shift. I shouldn't have. Dispatchers don't go to scenes. We're omniscient and blind, like gods in a myth who had their eyes put out with hot irons. But I went, because something in me needed the distance between my screens and that porch to be less theoretical. The basement was cool even in June. The walls were the kind of white you get from 1 gallon of paint that had to cover too much. In the little built-in cabinet, there were coins, pennies mostly, greened into fuzzy heads, buttons, a rosary with 3 beads missing, and a ribbon of fabric that had once been blue. I touched it. It was brittle as a moth's wing. "Why would someone put this in a wall?" Megan asked. She had the hopeful, exhausting face of someone who works with other people's lives all day. "Is it like a blessing?" "Grave goods," I said, surprising myself with the phrase. Sometimes people tuck things into houses like you would into a coffin. Old tradition. People forget why they do it. I didn't say, because something in the house died and needed to be sent on. "We hear humming," Lucas admitted, not looking at me. "Not every night. But when it hums, I can smell dish soap." Megan squeezed his arm. "We both hear it," she said, preemptive against the doubt she must get from family who don't believe in the same shapes. "She doesn't hurt us." I nodded. "Useless. Keep the cabinet as it is for now," I said. "Don't remove anything." They didn't. And for 2 months, the humming visited once or twice a week. It changed, less like a woman at a sink, more like a choir far away, halted by the weight of walls. Megan came to the center on my break one night, and we sat in the parking lot, and I watched her hands shake as she lit a cigarette she admitted she hadn't smoked since college. "I used to think ghosts were sadness that had to leak out," she said. This feels like the opposite, like something wants in." The night the humming moved down the block, I understood what she meant. We started getting calls from 707 Ashbury, then 709, then 715. Different families. Same report. "There's a woman outside. I can't see her well, but I can hear her. She's humming like my mother did when she made pancakes. Or, she's humming like my grandmother humming hymns while she's stitched. Always blue light involved somehow. Someone's TV wash, the porch of 713 glowing, the LEDs a teenager had stapled under his car's chassis, the way police lights made the snow look sea-deep as winter crept back in. The humming didn't always coincide with crisis. Once, it hummed while a woman labored in her living room, and my colleague talked her husband through the birth of their daughter. The woman later said she dreamed her aunt's kitchen during the worst of it. Another time, it rang through the phone while I stayed on with a man whose brother was trying to convince him not to swallow the rest of a bottle of pills, the tune like a hand on his shoulder. He didn't swallow. He cried into the phone and told me about the time their mother had hummed to cover the sound of plates clinking so their father wouldn't hear and yell. But sometimes it came like a warning. The night it sounded in my own walls, I understood that I was not an observer. My apartment is a second-floor box over a closed sewing machine repair shop. The hallway smells of dust and oil. My unit's windows are old aluminum sliders that let in the sound of the city like a second set of lungs. That night, I got home at 7:15 a.m., took my shoes off, and stood in my kitchen with my cheap mug and my cheap coffee, and the light through the blinds cut the room into strips, and I heard it, from the vent over the stove, faint, a woman humming an ordinary tune. It was nothing melodic. It was the hum of work. I froze. Then I put the mug down too hard, and it clinked, and I could smell dish soap, the lemon kind we had under the sink when I was 10, and my mother would say, "Elena, if you're tall enough to reach the counter, you're tall enough to wash plates." I thought of Mr. Bartlett, of his quiet, "She touched me." I thought of how some sounds are doors. I sat on the floor and cried like I had lost someone, even though everyone I had lost was already gone. The humming went on. It was not cruel. It was not kind. It was simply there. When it stopped, I slept with my back against the refrigerator like it could hold me upright. If this was a haunting, it wasn't a classic one. No plates flew. No flames wrote words. No voice commanded me from the closet. It was more like the town had developed an organ sound in its pipes, like a city that had acquired a secret note. The city tried to make it into something regular. The city is very good at this. There were memos, policy drafts. In the event of auditory anomalies reported as humming indicative of potential trespass or disturbance, officers will, and so on. We logged them. We tracked them. A local news station did a piece and called us for comment. We gave them none. Online forums spun up where people posted tinny phone recordings of their grandmother's kitchens and their newborn's first nights, arguing whether this was angels or gas leaks. A professor from Drake University wrote an op-ed about communal grief phenomena. A deacon blamed sin. A local bar put a blue dress cocktail on the menu made with blue curacao and lemon simple syrup and served on the porch with a salt rim. People took selfies under the blue light at 713 until Megan unscrewed the bulb. I FOIA'd my own records. I shouldn't have needed to. I could listen to anything from my console, but I wanted the paper. I wanted the body cam's audio so I could line them up with the CAD times and make a chart, something that would make this smaller. That's what I did for the Speedway pileup and the flood and the nursing home evacuation. Data makes the monsters wear collars. I printed a timeline and taped it on my fridge, a museum exhibit dedicated to a note. On the hottest night of July, the humming came back to 713 in a way that made the radio channels go suddenly quiet, like predators had walked into a room. The call was anonymous at first, a teenage girl with a voice like she'd stolen her mother's phone. "Something's wrong at the Blue Light House," she said. "The lady in the dress is back, and she's angry." 911. "What's the address of the emergency?" I asked, even though I already had it. I always ask. "It's the Spine. 713 Ashbury," she said. "It's loud tonight. It's like she's got other voices with her." I radioed it out. Officers rolled. I saw the maps swelling with little blue triangles again. Bengtson, who had 2 kids and a motorcycle he only rode on the warmest days. Terrell, who had once cried in the parking lot after a toddler seizure call, and then told me he had something in his eye. Lee, soft-spoken, precise. "Dispatch, 32, on scene," Lee said. "We have an auditory phenomenon." Understatement. I could hear it on the open mic. Not a single hum now, but a chord, the kind voices make when they're all humming slightly different notes. It pressed into the phone as if the line was full of bees. Megan called me. "Private line. Do we evacuate?" she asked, breath evicting itself from her chest. "Are you in immediate danger?" Policy first. I don't know what that means anymore, she snapped, then immediately. I'm sorry. No, we're okay. We're in the living room. The cabinet opened by itself. The things inside are moving. The radio keyed up. Dispatch, 32. We have movement of objects in a built-in cabinet. Documenting. Officers keep their language dry when the world is too wet. And then, like this thing had been waiting for someone to ask it a question, someone, not an officer, not Megan or Lucas, not me, spoke. It was a woman's voice. It came over the body cam like a draft pushing a door. It said, "Where did you put the plates?" The room in dispatch changed temperature. There's no way to prove that. The thermostat is a lie you tell yourself to feel in control. But we all felt it. The hair rose on our forearms like grass in wind. Repeat, I said into the radio. My voice was someone else's, and I rode it like a horse that didn't trust me. 32, repeat your last. Dispatch, Lee said, slow, like his tongue had gotten dry. Unidentified female voice within the residence asked a question. Officers are making contact. He said, like you do to anyone. Ma'am, we need you to identify yourself. Are you injured? The voice, not a whisper now, not breath, but something with the tone language gives, said, I have to get the dishes done before Frank gets home. He's working late. He'll be tired. I thought of a photograph on a mantle. I thought of a blue dress at a wedding when a woman still thought everything was possible. Ma'am, Lee said, professional, polite. Frank passed away. We need you to come out. There was a long silence where everyone who was listening remembered what their mother smelled like when she hugged them in a kitchen, and then the voice said, small, bewildered, he can't be. He's at work. And then, who are you in my house? We're the police, Terrell said softly. You called us many times. I don't call, she said. I hum. He likes the house to sound full. I know. I whispered to a room that couldn't hear me. I know. If I were telling this in a way that made sense, there would be a turn now, a reveal that makes it a story, a box of bones in the wall, a hidden photograph in a vent, a wronged woman whose anger whirled like a weather bomb, a pattern we break by doing the right thing. We didn't get that. What we got was this, a voice decompensated by facts, a house that held someone like a cupped hand, in a neighborhood that hummed back, because we all had kitchens once where someone made us feel safe. They brought in the chaplain. They brought in a social worker. They brought in a professor who had made a career out of explaining to taxpayers why streetlights flicker. Someone suggested an exorcist. Someone else suggested a psychiatrist. Someone else, a plumber. Megan cried in my ear and said, I just want to pour coffee for something that won't drink it. We didn't fix it. The humming didn't stop. It shifted. Some nights, it was one note. Some nights, it was a choir. Once, brief and terrifying as a flashbulb, it was a scream. Then it apologized, and I have that on audio too. Sorry, it said. I dropped a plate. The city's patience thinned where the supernatural met municipal code. Neighbors called to complain about loiterers and self-styled investigators lingering in cars at 2 a.m. under the blue light that Megan had never replaced. Property values became a word at City Hall. The humming became a joke at bars and a not joke in kitchens. People reported smelling dish soap in grocery aisles. A man drove his truck into the river, and when we pulled him out and I talked him through the coughing, he said, I wanted to be in something that washed. I started dreaming in halls lined with basins. I started keeping my dishes filthy on purpose so I wouldn't hear the hum when I washed them. I started buying paper plates, though I felt like a traitor to my mother's voice. I dated a firefighter for 2 months and broke it off because he liked to camp and the silence at night made me panic. What was I listening for if not the hum? I joined an online forum where people posted lost and found notes about ghosts like they were missing cats. I searched city records for the house's permits and found evidence of a 1964 remodel that had closed off a second doorway to the kitchen. I read old newspapers in a digital archive and found an ad for a blue dress at a department store that no longer existed and a church bulletin from 1959 with a list of women willing to bring casseroles to new mothers and widowers. Mrs. H. Bartlett was on it with a little star by her name. The last night I took a call from 713. I knew it was my last. I didn't know why. I just knew the hum threaded its needle through me and tied a knot. The yell I flashed and my headset clicked, and it was Lucas, voice raw, bone exposed. She's not humming, he said. She's talking to Helen. Who is? I asked. Stupid question. Reflex. The house, he said. And if he had said the sky was speaking to the lake, it would have made as much structural sense. It's like two radios on the same channel. It's like the porch and the kitchen and the cabinet are all saying the same thing. They're saying, come home. I sent officers. I sent everyone. I leaned so far back in my chair that my headset cord tugged and Jenkins gave me a look that said, "You're outside your body, Ruiz." The radio went live with 3 open mics at once, and the sound on each was the same. A woman sobbing quietly the way you sob when you're trying not to drop a plate. And underneath, that work song hum like a foundation poured under a house. "Dispatch," Lee said. We're going to open the cabinet." "Negative," a supervisor said immediately. "Hold. Do not. We're opening it," Lucas said on his phone, not hearing the radio. "We can't keep it shut anymore. It keeps coming open. The things inside are falling out. We need to put them somewhere." His voice cracked. "We need to put them with her." "Who?" "Helen," he said. "Where's she buried?" And in that moment, the job coalesced into the thing I was still good at. Find a location. Get a unit there. Give instructions. Keep someone safe, even if safe is a word that means something else tonight. I pulled the file I had made of Mr. Bartlett when he died. It had the funeral home's name. It had a cemetery. I typed Greenwood, Section 14, Lot 72, into a message to Unit 12, who had been on the first call, who had gone home and had a baby and come back and still rolled on nights. 12, can you copy? My voice was steady. Traffic stops were happening on other channels. Somebody was locking himself out of his car at a quick trip. The world is so absurdly normal between hauntings. "Copy," 12 said. "I have a possible location for Helen's grave," I said. "Greenwood Cemetery. Section 14, Lot 72. If we're doing this, if any of this is, if there's any logic here, maybe the goods go there." I swallowed. Maybe it's a door. There was a long pause where several careers balanced on a pivot called liability. And then the supervisor, the one with 20 years who had seen enough that he was weirdly brave where policy feared, said, "Do it. Go now." Megan put the items into a shoebox. The coins, the rosary, the ribbon. It felt like sacrilege and a repair. The hum followed them out of the house like breath on their necks. They drove in 2 cars with 2 officers behind them, slow like a procession, at 2:27 a.m. through a sleeping city that smelled like hot asphalt and old trees. I stayed on the phone with Lucas and patched an officer from the cemetery district on the radio. The gates were closed. The officers hopped them and lifted the latch from the inside, like kids sneaking into their own backyard. The fog hugged the stones low and blue. Section 14. I told them, which direction from the fountain, how many rows, count from the cedar with the weird twist. I knew because I had looked at the map when Frank died, because I had needed to know it was real. They found the stone. It was small, white, clean. Helen M. Bartlett, 1932 to 2011. Beloved wife. Leaves had gathered in the curl of the bee. Megan knelt and brushed them aside with a tenderness that made me look away from my own empty kitchen. "What now?" Terrell asked. "Put them down," I said. "Say something you would say if she were in the kitchen." Megan didn't hesitate. "The coffee's on," she whispered. "The sink's soaked. It can wait." She put the box against the stone. Lucas put his hand on her back. The officers stood with their hands awkwardly at their sides. Men who had learned to make shape from chaos, not being sure whether to salute or bow. The humming didn't stop. It swelled. It pressed. It filled the cemetery like mist. And then, audibly, distinctly, it did something it had never done. It changed key. It rose half a step, like someone who had been humming along to a song on a radio had finally found the live band. It cut off like a light. The silence that follows a note like that isn't quiet. It buzzes with all the sound that is missing. The officers breathed. The couple cried. I sat at my console and realized I had been holding my hand over my own heart, as if it might hum through my ribs. "Dispatch," Lee said finally. "We're clear." "Copy," I said, and my voice broke on the last syllable. That's not the end. It rarely is. The humming still comes sometimes, months between now, occasional as a smell you can't place, not tied to a house or a woman or a blue bulb. It comes out of old vents and beneath church doors and in the space between a cup and a saucer when someone sets it down. It comes when the dishwasher in the break room at dispatch clicks into its dry cycle and the room smells like lemon. The house on Ashbury is quieter. Megan and Lucas took down the cabinet door and hung the ribbon in a frame above the sink. The city forgot how to be outraged and moved on to the next thing it could not fix. The bar stopped making the cocktail when it got tacky to sell grief. Some nights, if you stand on the sidewalk and listen hard, you can hear cars, crickets, and the soft, regular inhale of houses that hold their people tight. I changed in small and stupid ways. I started washing dishes by hand again. I started dating a paramedic who hates camping and loves his mother. I leave my porch light normal yellow. When people call me in the night and tell me they hear humming in their walls, I don't tell them it's wind. I tell them, I'm not supposed to, but I do. If you hear it, hum back. It might be someone who just wants to be let in enough to say goodbye. If you ever find yourself on Ashbury at 3 a.m. and you hear a tune you can't place, keep moving if you want peace. But if you've got a name that still hurts to say, stop and listen. Some houses remember the people who love them. Some kitchens are hungry. Some nights are doors. And some voices, once they've found their way home, will make the whole neighborhood learn the song. My name is Marcus Mack Delaney. I worked nights at the Cuyahoga County Regional Communications Center from 2014 to 2022. If you've ever driven I-480 at 3 in the morning and dialed because your car made a noise it shouldn't, or because the fog swallowed the world and you needed a human voice, there's a chance I was the one who said, 911. What's the address of your emergency? In that flat, practiced way that's supposed to carry you like a bridge. Our room had the same recycled air every center has. The faint metallic tang from the racks in the server closet, warm dust smell when the heating kicked on, that thin plastic scent from headset pads that never quite goes away. 6 screens in a crescent, CAD with its gray text boxes that look like old bulletin boards, the radio console with its colored talk group tiles, the map screen that shows little triangulated icons for patrol units, and, if the technology cooperates, a 3-metered for a cell phone's Phase 2 location. YELI/ANI for caller info, the cross-discipline interop pane for fire/EMS, and an ever-scrolling list of incidents that feels like the river under a bridge. The fluorescent panels buzzed with a sound you stop hearing until you don't, and the vending machine in the break room exhaled all night like a tired animal. You get used to the hum, like you get used to the way your own pulse feels when you rest your thumb in the notch of your wrist. I thought I'd heard every kind of bad. Car fires with gas popping like popcorn in the tank. Domestic calls where the sound of someone quietly opening a drawer is louder than a gunshot because you know what comes next. Seniors who wake up at 2:12 a.m. convinced a stranger is standing by the bed, and sometimes the senior is right. I thought the job had edges. Then I met exit 23A, the ramp that isn't there. It started as a routine, which is how the worst things introduce themselves. 2:07 on a March Tuesday, the kind of night where the fog sits low like an extra layer of ground. The line rang. The ANI came up with a local number. The Phase 1 tower dotted near Brook Park. The Phase 2 took a breath and settled on the eastbound side of I-480 between the Grayton Road exit and the airport bend. I said my line. The caller answered like he was speaking into a pillow. Yeah, there's a ramp. I took the wrong ramp. The voice was mid-20s, male, nervous in a way that sounds like you swallowed something hot. In the background, engine ticking, the soft hiss of fog pressing at the glass. I'm at exit 23A. There's no sign. My car's half on the shoulder. There's a kid. She's just standing there. Okay, I said, tagging MVC. Disable and check welfare at once. What's your name? Darren. Darren, stay with me. Turn your hazards on if they aren't already. What does the child look like? 7, 8. Red hoodie. No coat. Bare legs. She's by the merge where he swallowed. Where it bends off. I toggled my foot pedal, lit the patrol talk group. Units for a disabled and possible child on roadway. Eastbound 480 near reported exit 23A. Caller says a ramp. Half on shoulder. Fog conditions. I threw it to Troop G and to our county sheriff cars, since it's a weird patchwork out there. 2 blue triangles spooled toward the dot. We get so good at watching those triangles that we forget they're people until we hear them breathe. Darren, I said, do not get out of the car. Do you see her face? Kind of. He hesitated. She's looking just past me, like she's waiting for someone behind me. The radio clicked. G21 en route. G18 en route. County 54 in the area. A fire/EMS station chimed. Rescue 3 can stage. Fog eats sirens. Makes them sound like they're underwater. The map showed 0. 2 miles. 01. A little car icon passed our phase 2 dot, and then kept going into an empty gray patch where the map software shows a ramp that, on my screen, doesn't exist. Dispatch, G21. The trooper said, cautious. Be advised, there is no exit here. The phase 2 dot stayed where it was, steady as a nail head. The caller's breath came colder through the mic. Fog does something to audio. Makes it thin, like a ribbon pulled taut. I'm looking at it, Darren whispered. His voice had gone scared and embarrassed at the same time. It splits. Left goes down, right keeps on the freeway. I took the left when I saw the sign. There was a sign, green, but when I slowed up there was just the shoulder. I'm on the paint. The kid is, the phone rustled. Hey, sweetie. Stay right there, okay? Do not exit, I said. Officers are almost on scene. Dispatch, the trooper again, more urgent. We're passing the phase 2. This is a solid noise wall, just the sound barrier and grass. No ramp. Advise the RP to give any landmark. Darren, what do you see besides the child? I asked, keeping my voice even. Our supervisor, Sharky, had drifted to my shoulder the way birds find thermals. Nothing, he said. Fog. The sound wall. The little reflectors in the shoulder. The kid is moving her hands like a, he struggled for the word. Like a crossing guard. Is she stepping into traffic? No. She's looking behind me again. Looking at what? He didn't answer. He made a small sound in his throat. Men have a tone their voice gets when something their body considers a child is in pain. I've heard it 3 times. When a dad holds his son after a bicycle fall, when a drunk realizes the person in the other car is young, and when a stranger sees a child by the road at night. It's like the throat forgets how to be a tube. She's pointing past me, down, he said. Like, under. G18 on scene, the other trooper said. Negative ramp. We're going to search the shoulder on foot. Copy, I said, and then to Darren. They're there. You might not see their lights in the fog yet. Stay in your vehicle. Talk to me. He went quiet the way people do when they're trying not to scare a deer. We both listened to the same air. His windshield wipers made that rubbery whisper set to the heartbeat of the hazard tick. Somewhere far down in the mix, I thought I heard water. The kid, he breathed. She's mouthing something. What is she saying? He swallowed. The sound came through as a click. It looks like TWE. He changed his mind. No. Sorry. I can't tell. I typed it anyway. You learn to type every fragment because when you stack enough pieces, sometimes the picture shows itself. We never found the child. We didn't find evidence of a merge or a ramp, either. G21 and G18 walked 100 yards of shoulder, shining their slanted flashlights into the fog so the reflection wouldn't blind them. Rescue 3 ran their scene lights and made night into a room no one wanted to be in. We took Darren's statement in his car, so he didn't have to get wet. He said the sign had been there, a green placard with white letters, but when he pointed it out, the troopers swept the beams and found only the sound barrier's ribbed concrete and a stretch of Jersey barrier beyond. He cried, abruptly, when he said the kid had bare knees, then apologized like he'd belched in church. Troopers noted no ramp present, no debris, no footprints, fog and condensation on asphalt, traffic volume low, conditions poor. I wrote the CAD entry the way you write something you don't think you'll ever read again. Succinct. The title was Disabled, Child Pass on RDWY. The final was GOA, Gone on Arrival. The narrative. RPOBS, Unknown Minor Standing Near Reported, Exit 23A. OFFS checked. NEG ramp. NEG contact W/minor. Sharky signed it. The troopers cleared. The fog quit around 4 when the sun thought about rising. We forgot about it. 2 weeks later we got 3 calls in 20 minutes about a man standing on the shoulder at exit 23, waving his arms as if directing someone down an imaginary off-ramp. The first caller hung up when I said, "There's no exit there," in that clipped, "You're mistaken," tone dispatchers get when they're too tired to be humble. The second caller was older. He spoke like he was telling me something he had promised someone else he would tell. He's got one of those reflector vests, the man said. He keeps pointing down like he wants people to go underneath. I almost did it. I almost followed his hand. But there's nowhere to go. The third caller was a woman who said she drives nights for the bakery and knows that stretch like she knows the creases on her husband's palm. I saw a girl last winter, she said, in a red hoodie by that same spot. Thought I was seeing things. Tonight it's a man, same place, different direction. I ain't stopping again. I pulled old highway maps from the county engineer's site during my lunch break. 1984, something called Exit 23A, Tremont Spur, sits where it doesn't now. 1991, the spur is drawn ghosted, like a book's erase mark. 1993, gone. I looked up the DOT project numbers, the demolition notice. The minutes from a 1992 public hearing. The PDF had been scanned from a photocopy and turned sideways. The way bureaucracy preserves history by making it irritating, said, abandonment of an used off-ramp at 480 EB mile 12. 9 due to safety concerns, sign removal, barrier installation. The notes listed legacy concrete, culvert, former access to Tremont Industrial, and then, under public comment, Mrs. L. asks whether bus crash in 1979 at same location is relevant. Project manager says no. I circled that and read on my printout with a pen I kept for circling the wrong things so I could show myself I wasn't going to forget. Bus crash. I searched the news archive. October 10th, 1979, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, school bus collides with panel truck on foggy 480, 14 injured. A paragraph in the fourth column, second page, said, witnesses reported the bus veered briefly toward an unfinished ramp rebar before writing. A minor, a girl, was seen on the shoulder. No child was found. A week later, driver cleared of negligence. Officials fault weather, road conditions. You can say the brain is an engine for fitting coincidences to a story. The brain wants to put the world in a cabinet. Mine started finding a shape anyway. Fog, a place, an almost exit, children who appear and aren't there, pointing down. Then came the night that made it more than a hard-to-explain entry in the CAD. A little after 3 on a May Thursday, the county's phone system burped. Sometimes a trunk line does that. Drops a call, picks up another, plays a tone that sounds like someone put a penny on a piano key. We have a screen that shows the cube bouncing between centers. In the bubble labeled Brooklyn/I 480 corridor, there was a jump. 7 calls queued, then 2, then 9, then something I've never seen. Merged feed. All 7 launched into my ear at once. If you've never had 7 people speak to you in one ear, it feels like the part of a dream where you're trying to dial and the numbers keep changing. I slammed the conference split key, so each call got its own ping. From pane 1 came a woman sobbing. There's a ramp. I swear to God there's a ramp and a van is going down and there's nothing there. From pane 2, a man gasping as if he'd run. She's in the lane. Little kid. Red. She's pointing down. What is down? From pane 5, a voice like gravel. My GPS says exit 23A and there's a barrier. Are y'all playing a prank? From pane 7, a teenage voice speaking so fast his words clipped. The sign flickered and then didn't have letters, and my friend says this is where her aunt says the bus happened. Sharky threw me a look and patched in 2 more call takers. We were 3 people holding the edges of 9 mouths. Okay, everybody breathe. I said into pane 1, then pane 2, then pane 5. You are eastbound on I-480 near Brook Park. There is no exit at 23A. Do not change lanes suddenly. Maintain your current lane. If traffic in front of you stops, stop. Do not attempt to go down any ramp. Do you hear me? In pane 3, a man said, he's waving me down. He's got one of those vests. Do not follow his hand, I said, and realized I'd said something I would write into a policy if they let me. We lit up everything that could roll. State troopers, county, local PD, the ODOT incident truck with its aero board. Rescue staged at Grayton. A trooper's voice cut across the channel. Gee, 18 again, God bless him. Dispatch, we've got a pileup starting. It's a chain, nose to tail, fog heavy. I'm going to shut down the right 2 lanes. Copy, I said. In pane 4, a woman was speaking in a whisper. She's mouthing something. Pane 6, she's pointing down. Pane 8, my radio just said 23A and I ain't never heard that number. Pane 9. There's air moving under the wall. I can hear it. That last thing, it pressed on some part of my head I usually keep closed for work. Air moving under the wall. Like a culvert. Like water under the road. I told Pane 9, roll up your windows. It's already up, he said. I can hear it through the metal. The map showed a pulsing color now, the way our system draws an incident heat bar when calls cluster. The troopers' triangles stacked up. One of the county units toggled his body cam open for interop, and I could hear the fog on his mic. A texture like TV snow, like 1,000 tiny beads hitting a drum. Dispatch, he said tightly. We have an apparition or a person. Can't tell in this soup. Small frame. Red hooded garment. Bare lower legs. Standing pressed against the barrier looking at the asphalt. Waving her hand as if indicating a downward turn. Copy, I said, because my mouth knew how to do that, and everything else in me did not. Here's the thing that turned it from weird place where people panic into haunting. In Pane 1, the woman said, she's mouthing the word 12, and in Pane 2, the man said, she's mouthing the word 12, and in Pane 5, the teenager said, she's saying 12, like she's counting down. No one says the same wrong thing in the same way unless something is wearing them like a coat. 12 what? I asked, stupid, because what I meant was 12 who? Months? The woman guessed, choking. Years? No, the teenager said. She's saying it like a place. Like a number on a, he sucked breath like a hiss. Mile marker. I looked at our milepost layer. The dot sat at 12. 9. In the 1991 highway plan, the culvert that carried Abrams Creek under the highway was labeled C12. 9. If you wanted to tell a driver, with only your mouth, that there was a hole under the road, how would you do it? You would point down. You would say 12. I told the troopers, check the culvert inlet behind the barrier. Negative access, G18 said. Barrier continuous. Then, after a beat, stand by. There's a tone a man's voice gets when he finds something he didn't think he believed in. Dispatch, he said, graveled. We have void space at the base of the barrier, erosion. Another voice crowded the radio. I recognized an ODOT foreman by the way he hit his PTT like he wasn't used to it. We've been meaning to foam that, he said, as if telling me a fridge light burns out. Got behind on the bid cycle. There's a cavity. If someone thought there was a ramp and took it at speed, they'd. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Shut it down. Sharky said to no one. To everyone. To the room. To the world. Shut down the right lane. Then the next. They did. The arrow board blinked chevrons. Urgent even through fog. Units staged back a quarter mile to slow traffic. Red and blue becoming pink on the mist. Someone, no idea who, a trooper maybe, or a firefighter, hung a yellow tarp over the barrier where people kept seeing the child so no one else would follow her hand. It flapped like a tongue. The calls dwindled. The fog lifted at dawn like a bad idea gone out of fashion. That morning, ODOT set cones and measured and shook heads and said words about undermining and slope failure and the old poor. A week later, a crew blew orange dust off the shoulder, drilled holes, foamed the cavity, painted the barrier. The news ran a piece with a friendly anchor saying, "This phantom exit is the stuff of social media legend," and a DOT spokeswoman in a hard hat saying, "There is no exit here, and there hasn't been for 30 years. The phrase, phantom exit, stuck like gum on a seat. But I kept my own notes. Because calls like that feed the city rumor like a cat, and what the rumor leaves out is the part where someone dies. 19 days after the culvert was foamed, I took a call from a woman with a voice like she had bitten her lip to keep it together and bitten through. "I lost my boy there," she said without me asking a question. "Everyone says he fell asleep. He didn't fall asleep. He turned like someone told him to. He said 23A into the hands free, and then he wasn't there." Her name was Andrea. Her son, Tyler, died 4 years before my call. The coroner said he hit the barrier at 62 in a 55, drifted right. No drugs, no phone distraction, no mechanical defect. Night clear, no fog. His last word, captured by the car's aftermarket head unit and recovered for the record, was 23. His girlfriend, on the line with him when his voice turned into a burst, said she had asked, "Which exit?" And he had said, 23, I think. He had been in the exact location we now knew about. He had not been a fool, nor a boy who made teenage mistakes. He was a person on a road that makes people see a door. I went deep. It is not my job to go deep. That is detective work and historian work and journalist work and grieving mother work. A good dispatcher takes the next call, or you start seeing doors in your own kitchen. But I printed old maps. I paid $2.99 to the archive for the 1979 bus crash photo that shows a yellow mass of vehicle at an angle with one wheel off the pavement and a man in a reflective vest pointing left, down. I found a state report from 1981 that uses the phrase driver confusion at unbuilt on off. I called a retired ODOT engineer who smoked through half our talk and said, "Oh, that bloody thing." Like we were discussing an uncle who ruined Thanksgiving once and never came back. He told me the ramp was poured and partially graded when funding got yanked. They ripped it out in '92 but left legacy geometry. His words, a ghost of concrete under the grass, a warmth in the earth on a map only surveyors read. He said, "There's a thing about origami. If you ever fold the paper, it'll always want to fold there again. Same with roads. People feel them." I wrote that down, then stared at it like it might make a noise. 3 months after the fog night, a Subaru rolled at that spot. Single vehicle. Moderate injuries. Driver swore he saw a white minivan shoulder deeper down a short connector and tried to take it to help. There was no minivan. He had a dash cam. The dash cam footage shows a flicker, a green ghost in the fog that looks for 3 frames like a sign. E23A, Tremont. It says, then becomes nothing. The video has been scrubbed from everywhere, but you know the internet. Once it wants you, it won't let go. I watched it at 2 in the morning with the door open because the apartment felt small. After the 3rd loop, I shut the laptop and sat with the kind of quiet that feels like the room is waiting for you to do the right thing and won't say what that is. The last time Exit 23A called me, it did it while I was already talking to another woman. Her name was Anika. 2:51, February, black ice out toward the airport, a sky that felt like a lid. "I can't see," she said in a voice that made me wish an operator could reach through wires and touch a shoulder. The fog, it went from nothing to solid. There was a sign. The letters slid, like rain on a window. Her face sat like a pinhead in the same cursed stretch. "Anika, you are eastbound on 480 near Brook Park," I said. "There is no exit where you are. Maintain lane. I'm going to stay with you until you're out of the fog." "Okay," she whispered, then made a sound like she had just seen a child in a red hoodie standing by a wall. "Oh my God, do not," I started. "She's pointing down," Anika said. "She's mouthing." "I know," I said. "She's saying 12. I know." Silence. Then, "How do you know?" "Because I'm looking at the same thing you are," I said. "Just from very far away." I breathed once and flattened my voice into a plank. "Anika, listen to me very carefully. Put your left wheels on the rumble strip. You'll feel the vibration. Keep them there. Resist any urge to follow the hand. There is no ramp. If you feel your hands wanting to turn, that's okay. They're wrong. Keep straight. Do you understand?" She cried, not sobbing, leaking. People usually leak when the instructions make sense at the same time as the world doesn't. "Okay," she said. "The car is fighting." "Of course it is," I said. "It wants to be polite." "Not today. The rumble strip will talk to you. Let it be the only voice." She breathed with me. "Okay. I am going to count," I said. "You may hear numbers. Mine are the only ones that count." "Okay. 10, I said. 9. My supervisor gave me a look that said, "We do not count." I kept counting anyway. 8. 7. You'll pass the worst of it at 5. 4. 3. Keep your left wheels talking. 2. You'll see a light through the fog, slightly warm. That's the ODOT truck. 1. She sobbed once, not with pain, with relief. "I see it," she said. "It's like a sun." "Good," I said in a voice that felt like I could sleep in it. "You made it." After she cleared, Sharky put his hand on my shoulder. He's the kind of supervisor who doesn't flirt and doesn't hug. He holds rooms together by naming what happened. "You just wrote a policy with your mouth," he said. "Type it." The memo went out the next week. I-480 eastbound, MM12, 9 to 13. 1. Fog-related anomalous reports of non-existent exit labeled 23A. Advise all callers. Maintain lane. Do not follow perceived signage or hand signals. Keep left wheels on rumble. Proceed until ODOT arrow board or actual exit signage. We called it Exit 23, a protocol. People snickered at the name. Dispatchers are allowed to make gallows jokes or weed rust shut, but they used it, and the rollover slowed. And the calls dropped from 9 in a burst to 1 every few weeks, then months. Not zero. Never zero. I burned out not long after. They put me on days for a while, then on training, then on leave. I told HR I had sleep issues. That's true if you widen the word. People say the job gets into your bones. This one got into my roads. I started taking surface streets even at noon. I started thinking about culverts at dinner. I moved apartments. Nothing fancy, just a different angle on the same sky. Sometimes I wake to the sound of tires on rumble strips and realize it's my neighbor's dryer with one coin trapped somewhere it shouldn't be. I still keep a folder. Old maps. Printouts. A copy of the 1981 state report with driver confusion at unbuilt on off, highlighted. A still from the dash cam with the ghost letters E23A. A grainy photo I probably shouldn't have of a little girl in a red hoodie on someone's dash. A double exposure or a trick of the lights. Sent to me by a bakery driver who swears it was in the windshield, not on it. I don't show these to anyone who doesn't ask twice. I don't want to make a church. One more thing. And it's small, which is the only kind of thing that feels true in stories like this. A month before I quit, a retired bus driver came into the center with a tin of cookies a wife had probably made. He asked for that dispatcher who knows the exit. He said, "I drove that route in '79 as a sub. We didn't crash. That was the other guy. But the fog that week was the kind that makes you see what the road used to be." He looked at my map printout like it was the face of someone he hadn't said he loved enough. We saw a kid at the barrier that year too. Red coat, not a hoodie. Coats were different then. He shrugged. Maybe ghosts age their clothes. He put the tin down. "Thank you for counting," he said. No one counted back then. If you ever find yourself on I-480 eastbound near Brook Park with fog that turns the world into a wall, if a green sign you don't recognize blinks its letters like a fish underwater, if a child in red stands by the barrier and points down as if there were a gentle turn into a neighborhood that hasn't existed on paper since 1993, keep your left wheels on the rumble. Let the noise be your friend. Do not follow her hand. She might be pointing at something real, a culvert mouth, a fold in the road where the earth wants to remember its old trick. Real doesn't mean safe. There are places that keep their old instructions and whisper them when the fog returns. There are exits that were half-born and never got a birth certificate. There are numbers that live under paint. We used to think roads were just concrete. We forget their stories poured flat. Drive daylight if you can. If you can't, tell someone where you are. If the sign flickers and spells E23A just long enough to convince your hands, tell your hands they're wrong like you're talking to a toddler headed for a stove. And if the world turns to water and a voice in your head starts to count, make it mine. 10, 9, 8. Keep your wheels on the rumble. 7, 6, 5. There is no ramp. 4, 3, 2. The light you see is for you. 1. And if one night you hear air moving under the road, like breath under a door, just keep driving. Some doors are not for us. Some exits lead back to what the city was. The people who point there, they might be right. They might be trying to say what the mouth of a culvert would say if it had lungs. 12, 12, 12. Right doesn't mean you should go. My name is Charity Nguyen. I worked nights at the Multnomah County 911 Center in Portland from 2015 to 2022. If you've ever called at 3:11 a.m. because the river fog swallowed the freeway, or because your neighbor's music suddenly sounded like smashing plates, there's a chance I was the voice that said, 911, what is the address of the emergency? In the same tone I'd use to hand you a glass of water, flat, steady, no room for panic to live. Our room was a climate-controlled aquarium. Low ceiling, soft blue panels, 6 screens arced around each of us. Cat in the middle, gray boxes that never smiled. Radio console to the left. The mapping client with little triangles for units. YELI/ANI. Caller info. A next-gen 911 portal. And a scrolling list of open incidents like a conveyor belt. The heat vents smelled faintly metallic, like a hot penny, and the vending machine in the break room exhaled all night. There's always a hum in a comm center. Even the silence is powered. The call that broke the way I understand phones didn't come in with screaming. It came in open, no voice, just a carrier, the distinct room tone of a house where people sleep. The CAD labeled it what we label all ghosts first, open line. Timestamp 204, January. Rain at the margin between drizzle and needle. The ALI/ANI populated with a landline, rare these days. Name and address, 1217 and E. Prescott. Phase 1 said the tower I expected. Phase 2 gave me a good dot in the map. The line breathed. 911. What is the address of your emergency? I asked anyway, because you always ask even when you already know. Protocol is the net you throw over chaos, so it has a shape. Nothing. No background TV, no heavy breathing, no whispered argument. Just a murmur of house. In the far background, a soft rhythmic tapping. Not a clock, not the compression of pipes. Wood, like a loose vent cover tremoring against its screws. Hello, I said again, then used the rebid key, request a fresh hit on location. The dot didn't move. I toggled the auto text-to-speech for TDD/TTY, just in case it was a hearing-impaired caller. The screen dutifully printed GA, go ahead, into the void. Nothing answered. I coded it. Check welfare, open line. I hit the foot pedal. Any unit. Open line, possible disturbance. 1217 Northeast Prescott. Landline. No contact, faint tapping heard. Beat. Timeout 0206. Unit 241, the radio replied. Copy rock and roll. You learn to listen to houses. Some bedrooms make soft ocean sounds because of box fans. Some kitchens leak light like a theater curtain. This one felt like cardboard and laundry. Tight, muffled, and that tapping like a metronome under a pillow. On the fourth hello, the line clicked. Not a hang-up, more like a hand briefly brushing the hook switch. Then a breath, very close to the mouthpiece. And a whisper that iPhone mics usually slaughter into static, but landlines carry like nerve. It said, don't speak. Sir or ma'am, if you can't talk, tap once for yes. I slid into the silent call script we teach in week 3 and never stop using. Do you need police? Tap tap. 2 taps. No, or not that. Do you need medical? Tap. Yes. Are you safe? Nothing. The breath stayed close, thin and careful. Ambulance is coming, I said. Can you get somewhere you can lock a door? A voice answered that did not belong to the breath. Not on the phone, behind it. Farther away. Male, conversational, almost bored. Where are you going to lock it from? And then the line hard-clicked dead. Static swallowed the room for a second, the way it does in your head when you realize the hallway light was on and now it isn't. Dispatch 241 came on the radio. We're 2 out. I put a second call in for possible home invasion. The voice, the whisper, that tapping. I felt the heater lean into the ductwork above my head like something was holding its breath. I rebid again, because an address is the only true thing we get. Same dot. I sent fire/EMS to stage 2 blocks out. When 241 got there, their body cam audio piped through like our room had walked outside. Rain like a hiss on foil, boot slaps, a doorbell that sounded too cheerful for what doors do at this hour. No answer. Back door then. The lock had fresh gouges. Inside, the smell hit them, the kind of cold iron smell that even through a mic makes your tongue taste coins. Then the voice you get when a cop stops being a cop and becomes a parent for a second. Dispatch, we've got a mail bound. Attic, conscious, breathing. They found him belly down on rough plywood under a hatch no bigger than a suitcase lid. Wrists tied, not with rope, but coaxial cable stripped and braided. Mouth taped with a square cut like a coupon. He had been positioned sideways between rafters, facing an old junction box where 4 lines fed, the house's copper nest. That's what he'd been tapping. His heel against the sheet metal of a duct, steady. 1 to 2, pause. 1, 2, 3. Later, I would lie in my bed and count. S-O-S, but wrong tempo. Not a message, a metronome to stay awake. He was a teacher. Name withheld here not because the papers didn't print it, but because certain names belonged to their houses after. He said a man had come in 2 hours earlier, quiet as sleet, and said, "I'm going to organize you," which is a phrase that wrecked my stomach more than if he'd said anything vulgar. He had a mask on, not a balaclava, not COVID, but one of those white molded dust masks contractors wear, the kind that looks like a shell. He moved like he knew the floor plan better than the man who owned it. How did he get in? the detective asked later. Heat came on, the teacher said, his voice shredded. The vent in the bedroom knocked. I went to check the register, and he was just there, inside the crawl. Inside the crawl. He didn't take anything. He didn't ask for card numbers or safes. He only bound him, adjusted him, rotated him like he was aligning a satellite dish. He moved through walls, the tiny chases between studs where old houses hoard their dust and dead spiders and pennies dropped by kids in 1973. He spoke through the vents like a teenager telling a ghost story to his little brother from a fort. You'll hear me. I'll be here. The last thing he did before he left. He lifted the handset on the kitchen wall phone, laid it next to the cradle without fully depressing the hook switch, and threaded the phone cord through a splinter so that any shift would keep it off hook. A landline seizure, old as the system. Then he pushed up into the attic and disappeared into the joists. The first time, we called it a one-off. Portland's got a long history with old houses and weirder men. Detectives took prints. The teacher moved into a hotel. The phone company came out and found evidence of a micro-induction clamp, a tiny donut of copper that, if you put it around the right wire, can eavesdrop the line like a stethoscope. AT&T said it was oddball legacy tech. A journalist called it phone freaking and posted a picture of beige plastic and yellowed wires like a mushroom. 3 nights later, at 2:08, like the night had turned mean and marked the minute, the same landline called us again. The teacher was still at the hotel. No one was supposed to be in that house. The house exhaled, and I could smell dust through a wire. An old, clogged smell with a sweet high note like mice bedding. That tapping again. 122 pause. 123. 911. What's the address of the emergency? I asked, stupid and dutiful, and the house answered me through its own lungs. Ductwork sighs, the faint tick of baseboard heat, the sub-bass of the refrigerator's compressor vibrating the whole skeleton. Then a voice, not whisper now, but speaking, in my ear, and because landlines don't compress like cell phones do, it had a physicality, a weight. You picked up faster this time, Charity. The room telescoped. My supervisor, Dana, turned her chair slowly like you do when lightning is about to flash. Identify yourself, I said, and I heard my own voice make space around the syllables like I was trying not to touch them. Someone has to test your timing, he said cheerfully. He sounded youngish, but not by age, by temperature. Warm voice. Friendly. The kind of tone you trust with your address. Hang up on me, and I'll call back. Don't hang up, and I'll show you something else. Are you in the residence? I asked, because we live by the script when the ground moves. No, he said, and laughed at the accuracy. I'm around it. We're all around it. Who is we? A pause like a held breath. The ones who fit in the parts nobody sees. The breath shifted, and for a second I heard the heat kick, that soft WHUMPH as gas catches in the furnace, and I pictured him lying on his stomach inside a return, cheek on the metal, grinning, his voice pouring down the duct into the phone on the wall he had propped open like a door with a shoe. We sent units again. We had to. They rounded the block twice, walked the back, trailed flashlights along the sill lines where a body could slither in. Nothing. But as 241 cut through the alley, his body cam picked up a glint under the crawl vent like a black bead. He crouched. It was a microphone, the size of a pea, sharp as a wasp stinger, epoxied to the vent. Inside the house, more. One inside a lamp base. You could see the tiny mesh if you knew. One in the smoke detector that still blinked its little red heart every 5 seconds. A Raspberry Pi Zero, the kind of cheap microcomputer we give 14-year-olds in STEM programs. Nested in the attic near the junction box, snaking to a GSM module with a prepaid SIM. He had built a house that called us by itself. The techs took it apart like bomb squad guys in a movie. Gentle, suspicious of the obvious. The phone carrier confirmed. The line had been seized by a foreign device, speed dialing 911 whenever the set was off hook for more than 90 seconds. The Pi ran a cron job, literally a schedule, so that every hour on the 08 it would tickle a relay and make the house pretend to be a panicked person who can't talk. The microphones fed back into the system, and when we picked up, so did the house. I sat there with the phone on my head while the officer upstairs said, "Found another one," and it went cold in the room because so had he. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. When you make yourself a professional ear, you hear your own apartment after that. Every duct is a throat. Every fridge has a word. I stood on a chair at midnight and unscrewed my smoke detector and felt stupid and still took it down and put it in a drawer. The open lines spread. 2, 3, 5 houses in the same 8x8 block in Alberta started calling at 2:08 with landlines that hadn't rung in years. Vacant, staged Airbnb, teacher's house, a duplex. Most had adjacent crawl spaces, the kind of old Portland underbellies where stray cats watched you like gods. Every one of them had a little electronics graveyard tucked where the copper came up, clamp mics, $15 GSM boards, Pi Zeros with microSD cards labeled doorbell, MP3 and mic test, PY, all with the same schedule, as if someone wanted to see if we, dispatch, were the constant or the variable. Were our times predictable? Were our voices? The detectives pulled me into a briefing because I'd taken the first, and because they needed to hear how the room hears things. I explained ANI/ALI, Next Gen, how landline class of service flags the CAD orange, how we rebid, how a talking house feels in your ear, the weight of it, the way the HVAC makes a bed of marbles roll somewhere you can't see. I told them he liked the attic hatch. He would get a man under it, vulnerable, facing the wires, then lay the phone off hook so the house would cry whenever it breathed. I told them he knew how to code, "No, I need medical," with a metronome when the victim couldn't speak. "Why medical?" a detective asked. "Because it brings the most people," I said. "And no one yells at medics when they break a door. They watch me like I was telling a fairy tale." I wanted to be wrong. They designated him the vacancy. I called him the tenant in my head, because there's something uglier about a man who is in your house, but isn't. Commenters on a neighborhood forum called him the crawl. The paper settled on the whisperer, which I hated because it made him sound like a children's book. The chatter started about unhoused encampments, about mental illness, about addiction. That's the city's reflex. Make a class out of a man to feel like we understand. He didn't belong to a class. He belonged to holes. The third week, something changed. The open lines started staggering. 2:08, then 2:12, then 2:21, like someone had widened his net or a clock was slipping. Dana said, "He's load testing you." And I loved her for turning a horror into a network term I could hold. We tightened procedure. Flag landlines, double bib the address, send 2 if we had them, call back on cell if we had it, call the carrier to busy out the line, force a disconnect, after officers cleared. It helped and didn't. The calls still came. You could feel him in them, a forgotten breath in a metal throat. Then, because it has to escalate or it's not a story, the line rang and it was my apartment. I lived then, in a second-floor one-bedroom over a salvage store on MLK that sells reclaimed doors and sinks. Creaky building, big street, transients talking to the night at odd hours. My landline exists because my cell reception is a joke in that brick, because I'm a dispatcher, and because I'm old-fashioned in exactly one way. I keep it on the kitchen wall because that's where phones live in my head. I had never given the number to anyone I didn't have to. ANI/ALI, residential. Name, Nguyen, charity. Address, mine. Timestamp, 2:08. My mouth moved without asking me. 911. What is the address? I said, because that's what you do when a bear walks into your kitchen. You offer it water. The line breathed my own house back at me. That weird old building echo. The fridge's fan with its off-center wine. The tick of the gas range, sometimes, when the metal cools. And under it, faint, so faint, like fingers brushing a tabletop. Tap, tap, tap. Charity, Dana said quietly next to me. I coughed. I'm sending to my own address. I told the radio, and I did the thing we never do. I self-deployed a patrol car to my home. Unit 241, Unit 219, open line, possible intruder, dispatcher residence. Copy emergency response. There's no code for when the puppet show lifts the curtain and the puppeteer looks at you. You make one. Copy, dispatch, 241 said. He didn't even ask if I was sure. He ran hot, and so did 219, and I love them both for exactly 5 seconds of my life more than any other strangers. The line didn't speak like it had at the teachers. It listened. I knew because I heard the faint shift when I stood, the way the building flexed under my weight, the way sound carries through old wood floors. I heard the words around me and through the wire at the same time. That is a feeling that breaks a person into 2 people. It's the definition of haunting in a secular city. Talk to me, I said into my own kitchen. Tell me what you want. The voice, his, answered not in the phone, but in the vent above my stove at home. Quiet, amused. I want to see if you believe the house. I used my finger to unmute the private line to Dana and, with the other hand, kept the 911 line open. Get them to check the crawl vent on the south wall, I said. Under the fire escape. There's a missing brick. I knew because I'd seen a cat go in once and thought, good for the cat. Dispatch, 241, the radio came. We're at the door. Do not knock, I said, breathless. Back alley. South wall. Fire escape. Crawl vent. A pause. Boots on wet metal. Then, we've got a panel off. Sorry, looks pried. There's a bag? No, wires. Jesus. We've got a pie and a little black box. Another mic. He cloned your setup. The line in my ear sighed. They're good, the tenant said, lightly pleased. They learn. What do you want? I asked again, quieter, and heard a new sound. The click of my kitchen light chain against the glass shade. Once, like someone tapped it with a fingernail. To stay, he said, and for the first time there was a temperature to the word. Not warm now. Cold as the underside of a bridge. I live where the house lives. People move. Houses remember. They didn't catch him. He was a body length ahead of the officers, the way a rat can be inside a wall you cannot be inside. He left the pie as a present, like a cat leaves a moth. He left a GSM board with a SIM that had been topped up with cash from a kiosk by the Greyhound station. He left a tiny thumb drive with a file called line test _ charity. Wave. I shouldn't have listened. I did, later, in my car where I could be certain the only wires belonged to me. It was my house breathing at 2:08 a.m. and then my own voice saying, 911. What is the address of the emergency? Creamy with the small sleep roughness I'd had on a different night, cut into a loop like a prayer wheel. After that, the calls came in waves, not just open lines, but burst dials from numbers that resolved and then unresolved, like someone had taught a machine to make half-finished thoughts. The phone company found pseudo-ANI, spoofed calling party IDs that pointed at empty numbers, misprovisioned blocks, never used exchanges. The tech at the carrier said, software to find radio, in the same tone a park ranger uses to say, cougar. He said a guy with the right antenna could simulate a landline signature, could trick our system into believing a call was the kind we treat with our most careful hands. He had moved from copper to air. We started getting silent TTY, the text phone protocol chiming into our terminal, printing GA with no words like someone was being held underwater and trying to type with teeth. We started getting rapid SOS pings from phones that did not exist, dots appearing in backyards and crawl spaces, bouncing to the nearest Wi-Fi beacon and vanishing. We started getting callbacks to administrative lines with the caller ID of our own consoles, the phone calling itself, answering itself, like a dog seeing itself in a mirror and wagging. The city got angry because the city likes stories where you can point and say there. Letters to the editor told us to sweep the encampments. Next door told itself the guy lived in a tent with a string and a tinfoil hat. The detectives, who are better than people give them credit for, split their attention. One team on hardware, where does a person buy 10 pi zeros with cash? One team on behavior, the schedule, the geography. One team on the houses, where can a body fit between studs? Dana told me to take a week. I didn't. The room felt safer than my house. You want the chase? I'll give it to you, because otherwise this is just a litany of breath. We got him on a Thursday in March when a retired lineman named Arlen called the admin line and said, I used to work on these boxes when they had real bells inside. Somebody's been borrowing my pedestal. He was talking about the green metal cabinets where the neighborhood's phone lines sprout like hair. Found a coil on the pair for 1217 Prescott, he said. Fresh scratch on the paint. If your guy's smart, he's using the pedestals like hotel lobbies. They put a watch on 3 of them. Unmarked cars on corners where no one sits for fun. At 2:05 the next night, a figure in a hooded jacket came up from the dark like he'd been poured there, squatted, popped a cabinet with a shim, and did what he does, checked the clamp, adjusted something, reached into his pocket for a phone. 241 walked up soft, slow like a coiled tape measure. Hey, friend, he said, and the guy looked up and smiled in the way that says I know you. He ran. Of course he ran. He went not down the sidewalk, but along the houses, fingers in the clapboard, shoes on dirt where the drip line eats grass. 241 and 219 ran too. The chase cam video, edited later for court. Has a minute where you can see everyone's breath, and then a lattice of crawl vents and a blur of jacket, and then a reflected face in a low window. Eyes like a raccoon, and then the sudden absence where he went under a porch like water. They cornered him in the service tunnel under an old fourplex, where the boilers sweat and the cobwebs look like bandages. He had a bag, a tool roll as neat as a chef's. Inside, coil clamps, micro mics, zip ties, a cheap SDR dongle, a rubber mallet, a dust mask, 3 prepaid SIMs in cardboard sleeves, a roll of Cokes, 2 Pi Zeros, a little white USB 808 cable that made Dana hiss through her teeth, because that's how you clone a device without removing the card. On his wrist, a hair tie. On his finger, no ring, but a pale circle where one had been. On his forearm, drywall rash. On his cheek, a smear of the same dust that lives in every crawl. He didn't fight hard. He wriggled, and that was worse. He looked at 241 and said, "This is in the report, and I heard it live. You have a nice voice, officer. I can hear your house when you talk." His name, on his license, Cole Meyer, 34. No felonies. 1 trespass, 10 years old. He had a job once at a low-voltage contractor. Alarms, phone systems. He had a crossing guard citation on his DMV because 10 years ago he had helped at a school, and there was a record somewhere of vests and arms waving in traffic. The tenant of his storage unit, because of course he had one, was his ex. She'd stopped paying 3 months before. Inside were drawers, plastic carrying trays with foam cutouts, each labeled in label maker font: pedestal, attic, vent, smoke, ringed out. He had a picture of himself standing shirtless in a crawl under a porch, grinning like a spelunker. He had a journal, handwritten, neat, with dates and clock faces drawn in the margins and notes like 208, answers in 6 rings, charity, and voice learns and houses like to talk when heat cycles and organize you worked. Underlined in pencil 3 times, the house is the instrument. The people are the room. I thought catching him would shut the night up. For 2 weeks, the call stopped. I slept like I had been allowed to forget. Then the house at 1217 Prescott called again. 208. Tap, tap, tap. The teacher had moved back in because people moved back into their lives. Rent is rent. Patrol checked the perimeter, the attic, the vents. Clean. Carrier confirmed. The line was clean. No clamps, no pie, no funny business. The call had come from the network, from somewhere that knew the digits and walked them to our switch like a child carrying a sealed note. I went to the evidence room and asked to see the pie they'd pulled from my place. The tech signed it out for me, and I looked at the cron tab, the schedule file. It had jobs to call my number, the teachers, 2 others, all at 08. But there were 2 other jobs. One was commented out with a little hashtag like a whisper, hashtag if arrested, run schedule from backup. The other was a bash script I took to a friend in IT who knows how to translate runes into English. It said, in gist, if the pie doesn't phone home to a number within 24 hours, his number, push the last week's call schedule to every device you've ever talked to. A dead man's switch, built out of $10 boards and cellular networks in spite. We went back to the storage unit. Behind the trays, inside a metal file cabinet, was a mesh bag like a diver would use for shells. Inside, SIM cards, 50 of them, rubber banded in stacks, each labeled, not with names, but with addresses. Prescott, Sumner, Jarrett, MLK. Some had little notes. Teacher, duplex, charity. He had seeded the city. You can't pull every splinter out of an old house and be done. The calls got quieter. Maybe the backups ran out of minutes. Maybe the city's skeleton decided it didn't like being taught to sing. But they didn't stop. A month later, a house in St. John's we'd never touched called, open line, 208, and played us its breathing. On night shift, we measured ourselves by that minute. We started saying 208, like other people say witching hour. New hires learned the script faster. Stay on the line. Listen, send 2. Check the vents, look up. When we cleared a weird one without finding anyone, Dana would say, we don't fix houses. We hold the people until morning. I moved apartments. Ground floor this time, because there's no duct under dirt. I bought a dog, a rescue with 1 ear that sticks and 1 that flops. Her nails on the floor at night sound like typing if I'm too tired. I don't keep a landline anymore, which feels like betrayal and like survival. I put my smoke detectors back up because dying in a dumb way would be a cruel punchline. I still take calls some nights as an on-call when they're short-staffed. When an open line comes in and the timestamp hits 2:08, I put my hand flat on the desk and feel for the hum, and I say, 911, what is the address of the emergency? And I listen like the house is going to tell me a secret that isn't awful. The medical examiner's report on Cole Myers said asphyxia, not during his arrest. To be clear, he died months later, alone, in a county jail cell with a towel and a knot, and a door nobody watched close enough. People will fold the story into that because it is clean, because it means the man who crawled your vents can again. But machines do not die when men do. Schedules keep, phones ring, and a house that has had its throat taught to speak will try, now and then, to clear it. I keep a folder, FOIA responses, printouts of switch logs with little gaps the carrier calls latency, and I call missing. A photo of a Pi Zero's job list with charity written in pencil next to the time. A printout of a forum post from a ham radio board where a user named Crawlspace asks about spoofing caller ID for legacy switches, and someone replies, illegal, don't. And he replies, the law is for people above the floor. A copy of the police report from the teacher's attic with the line, organize you, highlighted. A printout from a local subreddit where someone wrote, I keep getting calls from a number with my own area code at 2:08 a.m. No one there. House sounds? If your landline rings at 2:08 and no one answers, and you hear your own house the way a stranger would, dryer drum thumping, dog sighing, heat knocking, don't talk to it. If you do, say what we say, address, name, are you safe? If you hear tapping, 1 to 2, pause, 1, 2, 3. Know someone taught your ductwork Morse like a party trick. If you set the phone down and it calls back on its own, check the hook switch and the cord. Check the vent. Check the smoke detector. You will feel crazy. You are not. And if you ever find yourself in your attic, face inches from the old junction box where a braid of copper comes up from a crawl you've never seen, and you hear a man breathe through a return like it is a flute, and he says, I want to stay, you have my permission to flatten your chest against the floorboards and become transmission, scream, kick, tap the duct until your heel bruises, and keep doing it until someone answers. We answer. We always will. We will send you people with bolt cutters and blankets and the kind of hands that don't shake until later. We will busy out your line and pull the little bugs like beads from your vents. We will sit in lit rooms that hum, and we will hear your house, try to be a person, and we will talk back to it until the people are safe. I don't know if he started alone and the city trained others, or if there are always men like him, and arresting one just empties a chair where another will sit. I know this. Portland is old enough to have space inside it. We've let the guts of our houses become the place where trash blows and voices go. Phones are not innocent. Neither are vents. Nothing in your house is neutral at 2 in the morning. If your walls ever call me, I'll answer. I'll say your address back to you. I'll count your taps. I'll pull the thread. And if you pick up and hear me say, 911, what is the address of your emergency? And you didn't call me, hang up, go outside, and wait where the night can see you. The house will have to talk to itself for once. Some nights I still wake to a click and a soft breath by my ear that turns out to be the dog, or the heater, or nothing with a name. I lie there and press my palm to the wall and tell the building out loud, like a bedtime story to a child I'm not sure I like. You don't get to keep people. And the house, my new house, says nothing, which is an answer I can live with. My name is Ruth Alvarez. Nights, I worked at the Baltimore City 911 Center from 2016 to 2023, the glassed-in floor above the motor pool where the windows never quite sealed against the harbor air. If you've ever called from a row house at 2:43 a.m. because the upstairs neighbor was screaming, or because the boiler coughed black water and you didn't know who else to call, there's a chance I was the voice that said, 911, what is the location of your emergency? In the tone we practice until it's muscle, steady, measured, like you're saying a prayer with the brakes on. The room always smelled faintly of ozone from the racks and burnt coffee from a machine that should have been retired with pay. 6 monitors in a crescent, CAD in the middle, radio console left, mapping client to the right with its little blue triangles for units, ALI/ANI, caller info. Above that, next-gen panels for text, to 911 and TTY, and the rolling incident list like a conveyor belt of other people's minutes. The heating ducts rattled when they kicked on, and if a nor'easter was on the bay, the glass pane beside my station sighed like a tired lung. There's always a hum in a comm center. We live on top of a hive. I had been on nights long enough to learn the taste the city wears through the wire. The parkway hiss when traffic is light, the low throb of bass from a block party you can triangulate by the way glass vibrates, the wet cough of a failing heater, the hard click of an old kitchen phone lifted with 2 fingers by someone who has learned not to turn on the light. I thought I could tell the difference between refrigerator and fear. I thought I knew what a house sounds like when it keeps secrets. Cordelia taught me otherwise. The first call from her number lit my console on a wet March night that felt like the city had been dipped in dishwater and set to dry. 219. The ELI/ANI populated in polite orange, residential. Name, L. Cordelia Hargrove. Address, 1604 East Madison Street. A brick row house with a dented stoop rail and a little concrete yard where a rosemary bush did more work than you'd expect. Phase 1 tower right. Phase 2 dot. Centered. The line breathe. The way old houses breathe when the windows don't line up. 911. What is the location of the emergency? I asked. The line did not answer. It opened like a throat does when someone is trying not to wake the person in the next bed. Under the house hum, I heard a tick, ceramic against ceramic, and a thin hiss, like gas in a burner that hadn't caught. Then a voice, close to the mouthpiece, spoke in the tone of someone leaving a voicemail for a grandchild. "There's a taste on the tea tonight," she said. "Like pennies." "Ma'am, this is 911, I said automatically. "Can you confirm your address?" When you have the ELI/ANI, you still ask. People move, numbers don't. She didn't repeat it. She did that thing the elderly do when they're embarrassed to be taking up your time. Patted the conversation with apology. "I know it's late. Some nights you can't sleep and the house has too many corners. And now the phone is ringing by itself. See that? Silly thing. I'm saying, don't worry about me, darling." A beat. I just wish he wouldn't change the tea. "Who is changing your tea?" I said, my fingers moving ahead of my brain. "Check welfare. Possible gas leak. Elderly female alone." I hit the foot pedal. "Any unit. Welfare check. 1604 East Madison. Landline caller reports gas smell. Possible leak. Elderly female caller. Timeout 0221. Unit 412. The radio crackled. The voice of a patrol officer I knew by his laugh in the break room. "Copy. Does it smell like rotten eggs?" I asked the line. "Can you see the stove? Are the burners off?" "Oh, it's only a sip," she said, as if I were scolding. I told him I like tap, but he says tea is polite. She made a small, apologetic noise. "I think it's those little blue pebbles he sprinkles." "What's your name, ma'am?" Silence. Then, "I was Cordelia until June," she said wistfully. "Now I'm Unit 3A. Cordelia," I repeated, because names keep people from sliding. "Stay with me. Do you feel dizzy? Are you alone?" Another small clink, a breath that traveled the wire like a coat on a hanger. "I think it's colder than it should be," she said. "Is the window open?" No, it's cold in the tea." "Units, expedite," I told the radio. "Caller reports ingestion of unknown substance. EMS stage." The call went dead. Not a click, a dissolve. Sometimes the line opposes you. Sometimes it simply lets go. 412 found 1604 like the map promised. Paint peeling in sheets. A knot of plastic grocery bags tied to the fence like sails. Upstairs, Unit 3A, the brass numbers hung with a lean slant. No one answered a knock. They had the landlord's number from an old call. Weathers, Arlen. Landlord trotted up in jogging pants with wet cuffs. Fumbled a key from a bunch like a jailer. "Miss Cordelia's been gone since June," he said before they even turned the lock. "Bless her heart. We miss her. New tenant's a nurse, works odd hours. Can't keep up with the names." The apartment was erased in that way apartments get when you've given 30 days notice and your nephew rented a truck. Fresh paint smell not strong enough to hide the old. A single cup in the sink. The stove clean. No kettle. On the counter near the phone. A packet of silica gel, the kind found in shoe boxes, torn open, empty. On the windowsill, 3 blue grains, crushed to dust under a previous shoe. The officer found the phone on the wall with the handset set down not on the cradle, but gently beside it. The hook switch not quite depressed. If you want a house to call all by itself, you can lift that plastic tongue just enough to make the room talk. The tenant, a nurse named Toby, dark circles, scrubs with cartoon whales, arrived with her badge still clipped to the V-neck, keys jangling. "No tea," she said, bewildered. "I don't drink tea. The gas is off. I've been sleeping at my boyfriend's because of the painting." I wrote the call like we always write the ones that don't stand up in daylight. Short. Open line. Elderly female voice. Gas odor negative. No occupant. It sat in the CAD like a moth. 2 nights later at 2:19, the same number called again. 911. "What is the location of your emergency?" I asked in the voice that makes your body a plank. The voice said, "Patient as a technician. You have to turn the cup to see it." He puts it under the lip. "Who is he, Cordelia?" He says it's to help me sleep, but it sleeps me too hard. A small laugh. Now I talk to the phone when it rings all by itself, and I tell it the number because a person on the line forgets sometimes. "What's the number?" She recited it, the 10 digits printed on my screen for Cordelia Hargrove. And then, as if she was ashamed of doing something so self-involved, she gave me her address again and added, "3rd floor back. The heat pipes make a choir." I dispatched 412 again. When you get a voice twice from a place the map insists is empty, you don't hold it in your mouth like superstition. You test it. The officer found the landlord, Weathers, in the hallway again. He had changed pants. This time he wore an Orioles sweatshirt bleached at the collar. "Phone company must have a cross," he said cheerfully. "Numbers do that. Next tenant's line will be clear." He practically preened at being helpful. I sent a message to the carrier to busy out the line, force it to drop. Then to a supervisor at the Department of Aging, we sometimes loop on welfare weirdness. Just in case, I typed. Name online. Hargrove, Cordelia L. Deceased June? Landlord, Weathers, Arlen. Administrations like things written down on letterhead. I kept my own notes too. Inside the little fat notebook I shove into my bag and pretend is for grocery lists. On the top, I used my trash handwriting to write tea tastes like pennies. When you work nights long enough, certain addresses acquire a temperature. A street object becomes a magnet. 1604 went warm. My body learned to lean toward it. In April, the calls began to migrate. At first, it was just 1608, 2 doors over, then 1612. Same pattern. Landline open line at 219. A woman's voice, old Baltimore vowels shaped by Baptist basements and block parties in hospitals. Different details, same shiver. The tea tastes wrong. Why would the fire alarms go quiet like that? He said the doctor asked him to help when I can't sleep. In one, a voice whispered. He rearranges the pill box, so Monday is Friday. I started running obituaries on the late shift break room computer like a woman with a bad hobby. Hargrove, Cordelia L., beloved aunt and neighbor, died June 12, 2022, services at a storefront church on Monument Street. Rawls, Deneen, of 1612, died October the year prior, sudden cardiac event. Shapiro, Myron, 1608, complications due to age, 91 and on the downhill, the obituary said. Nothing to see, nothing to say in a city that has funerals like it has Mondays. But at the bottom of Shapiro's obituary, a line that twinged behind my ear. In lieu of flowers, contributions to the Hargrove Weathers Community Trust are appreciated. I printed the page and circled the names until the paper went soft. I did what we do when a pattern feels like a bruise you can't show a doctor. I FOIA'd ourselves. I pulled all calls from 1600 to 1620 East Madison in the last 12 months. We are not detectives. We are archivists of panic. But those archives talk if you read aloud. I highlighted gas odor, falls, lift assist. We send medics to help an elder stand after a tumble. Nausea/vomiting, syncope, passing out. Welfare. No answer. In more than half, the caller was the landlord, Weathers, who said things like, "She's not been answering," or "He's not been himself," or "I'm on site. Let me open for you." He used the word help a lot. He liked to stand in hallways with his keys and nod at EMS like a concierge. When I told my supervisor Jenna, a woman with a streak of gray in her bun like the natural stripe in an old mall cat, she listened the way a good supervisor listens. Face quiet, brain hot. "You got a name?" she asked. "Weathers," I said. "And the woman who keeps calling herself Cordelia." Jenna pulled the property records in the morning. She had that power and I didn't, and called me at noon when I was on the bus home with my headphones and pretending music works on brains like mine. It's a LLC web, she said, disgusted. Multiple row houses, East Madison, East Biddle, East Chase, owned by Glebe Street Holdings. Corporate owner, Hargrove Weathers Trust. Board, Arlen Weathers, Lenora Hargrove. Lenora is Cordelia's niece. Lenora, I said, and the way the L sat in my mouth made me think of a lacquered nail tapping a china saucer. I made more notes. LLC, trust, niece, owner calls for welfare, T. It sounded like paranoia when I read it back into my own dark kitchen. It sounded like a report in my head. Then the phones rang all at once. You work long enough and you feel the tone before you hear it. The net the switch throws when calls burst. At 2:19 on a damp Monday that felt like Tuesday pretending, the board lit. 7 landlines from East Madison within 3 house numbers of each other. 2 from East Biddle, 1 from East Chase, all open line. Other call takers looked up, like birds shivering when a pressure change crosses. I took the first. Ramos took the second. Dorsey took the third. I could hear their versions through our headsets in bleed, silence, then a woman's voice, then the little ceramic clicks that dishes make when they are stacked by careful hands. In my ear, a whisper. Chill. He's changing the batteries, she said. They don't chirp after, but that's how you know. Batteries where? I asked. In the detectors, she said. So they won't make a fuss. Do you see someone, Cordelia? I see his keys, she said, almost fondly. He wears them like a vest. Units, I said into the radio, and my voice had lost its plank and become something with rough edges. Multiple open lines, possible multiple locations, same landlord. Reports of changes to smoke detectors. Caller states taste of metal and tea. Treat as suspicious circumstances across addresses. That's me being polite for roll heavy. By the time 412 pulled onto East Madison, the block looked like an accident scene without a car. Lights turning old brick into a theater, neighbors in robes on stoops. A mother with a baby pressed to her chest so the baby wouldn't learn what blue and red means. Weathers stood at the center like a conductor, jogging pants again, keys at his hip like a skirt of coins. He said, I don't know why the phones are doing this. My brother's boy works for Comcast and says we need new lines. And I hoped he had a brother's boy, because I hoped there was a throat you could put your hand around in a courtroom later and say, explain to me where this money came from. Fire went door to door with their little bip-bip CO detectors clipped to their belts, the screens like toy calculators. In 1610, the meter screamed when they held it near the stove. Gas on, but not enough to smell if you're congested or ashamed of making a fuss. In 1606, a stove knob had been removed and placed in a drawer like a magic trick to confuse a sleepy hand. In 1614, the detectors had fresh batteries dated 2 days from now in Sharpie. Someone had predated the change to look like the future had already been safe. If you don't read that twice, you miss the seriousness of a man who will lie to himself on paper. At 1604, the new tenant, the nurse, opened the door in a mask because the paint smell and the suspicion had both thickened. I keep getting phone calls with no one there, she said. If it's debt collectors, I can't pay the last person's bills. Can we check your drawers for blue pebbles? A young firefighter asked carefully, and when she nodded and back-stepped into the little kitchen, I could hear the rosemary on the windowsill rub against the torn screen like a blessing. They found nothing that would stick to a charge, nothing that would make a judge sign a warrant on T. We wrote the calls individually, no physical evidence, no suspect on scene, advised landlord to secure, advised tenants to call 311 for housing inspection, to call 911 if they felt sick. Everyone left with a dose of carbon monoxide facts and a story to roll around like a marble. I went home at 7:15 and sat on my bed with the blinds open to the flat gray light and did what a person does when their job has turned them into a collection of wires. I made spreadsheets. Address on the left, date, time in the next column, caller name if any, landlord info, call type. When the sheet got long enough that my computer fan complained, I added obituaries in another tab. I made the mistake of clicking into the Hargrove Weathers Trust website. Vector logo, stock photo, diverse elders laughing at salads, and red boilerplate about helping seniors age in place. The language had that smooth non-stick coating grant writers put on cruelty. aligning care pathways and asset management for sustainable community wellness. My stomach rolled like a ship in a wake. At work the next night, Jenna waved me into the tiny conference space we called the fishbowl because 2 walls were glass and someone had taped a cartoon hook in the corner. A man from homicide stood inside with coffee that smelled expensive. He had eyes that had learned not to blink at blood. "Say it all," he said when I sat. So I did. I said tea and batteries and predated and obits and trust and keys like a vest. I scrolled my spreadsheet with my finger. I showed the circles I'd drawn on printouts like a person who doesn't trust electrons. He listened. He didn't say ghost. He didn't say you're tired. He said, we need a hook. Lawyers open doors with hooks. If he replaced detectors with non-chirpers or disabled them, that's a code violation. If he introduced benzos or opiates without a script, that's felony assault. But I can't get in to prove either unless someone lets me. And guess who holds the keys? Tenants, I said. Tenants, he said. Can you tell them to buy their own detectors? 2 in each apartment, battery-powered, not wired to his system. We don't do advice, I said. We don't. There's a line between operator and friend. Then off the record, he said, and smiled without his eyes. You tell me who on that street answers the phone. I texted Toby, the nurse at 1604. She had given me her number the second time we'd spoken because she said it felt like walking a dog without a leash otherwise. She answered from work in a voice that sounded like a hallway. I'm between rooms. I've been, I don't know, paranoid. I keep checking the smoke alarm and smelling the faucet. Buy your own detectors, I said. Battery. And a kettle. A kettle. She laughed once, not humor but recognition. I don't drink tea. You will tonight, I said. Make some water, pour it in a cup, taste it. If it tastes like metal, don't drink what he makes. I buy my own groceries, she said, and then I heard what she hadn't said out loud. Except when he does those welcome baskets with the tea and the little honey bears, and that she trailed. You think. Off the record, test your baskets, I said. Check under the lip of the cup, and buy your own. That night, I got a text from a number labeled Toby with a photo of a white mug turned upside down. On the ceramic lip, a smear of blue. Caption, what the hell is this? I told her to put it in a bag and not to touch her eyes, and to call the detective whose number I sent. In the morning, the lab called him back with a word I could feel in my gums. Amitriptyline, an old tricyclic antidepressant, powdered, a sedative in the wrong hands. A second test on a brown bottle they found under the sink in a welcome basket returned chloral hydrate, which everyone calls Mickey Finn when they want to sound less Latin. Old tools for old crimes. The hook went into the court's mouth. Search warrants followed like geese. They entered Weather's office in the basement of 1600, a room that smelled like coil heater and Windex, and found a drawer full of silica packs cut and folded like tea bags, a spool of blue desiccant beads, a mortar and pestle that would look wholesome in a Pinterest kitchen, 3 pill crushers, syringes without needles, a pharmacy's worth of unlabeled pill bottles with the labels peeled and shredded in a trash can whose bag had been emptied yesterday. In a locked file cabinet, leases where tenants had initialed a health liaison consent snowed under with disclaimers that let the trust move funds if care partners deem it necessary for safety. In a hidden wall safe, passbooks and checks and expired IDs of people whose names matched my spreadsheet in a way that made a prosecutor's eyes shine. Lenora appeared in emails in a tone that never made a mess. Auntie made oatmeal. Says keep an eye on Mr. Rawls at 1608. He looked peaked. Make sure detectors are quiet for church group. It read like a church lady making soup. It read like murder if you had ears. They pulled tissue from Cordelia's body, exhumed, careful, court orders like dominoes, and found traces of the same tricyclics. The medical examiner said interaction with existing meds, age, and suppression of gag reflex could have made aspiration a risk. If you want to kill a person gently, sedate them at tea and turn off the alarm that would call the neighbors. If you want to inherit, the ink writes itself if you let it. Arlen Weathers smiled in his mugshot like some people do in bad school photos. Teeth small, eyes trying to understand where to look. Lenora wore a sweater and a look of offense. At arraignment, she whispered to him like they were at a play. We made everyone comfortable, she said to a reporter later, voice trembling. No one wanted to go to a home. You think this is the part where the phones stop ringing? At 2:19 the night after the arrests, 1604 called again, and 1608, and 1612. I took 1604 because I know it like a scar. 911. What is the location of your emergency? I asked. Cordelia said, mildly, as if the question bored her. They always change the numbers, and then the people stay. There have been arrests, I said without meaning to. We're not supposed to be part of a story. We're supposed to be the hole it passes through clean. I know, she said. I can hear the stairs. But listen to me, dear. A pause. The blue beads are not the worst thing. What is? Quiet, she said. Quiet where there should be noise. That's the poison that makes the other poison behave. I wrote it down. Not in the CAD, where a prosecutor could eat it and spit it back as gossip, but in my notebook. Quiet is the poison. I underlined it twice. The city made a church out of the story for a week and then forgot how to listen. GoFundMes for tenants. An op-ed about greed. A segment on the elderly and aging in place. Lenora and Weathers got lawyers with names on glass. The charges were not murder because Baltimore has rules about proof, and this was a story about edges. They were financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, tampering with safety devices, distribution of sedatives without a license, housing code violations. The papers called it the teacup case because papers like to put poison in porcelain and make it quaint. I went to the service for Cordelia because no one told me not to. It was at the storefront church the obituary had named, folding chairs and a blown speaker and 6 women in hats shaped like hard candy. A cousin spoke in a voice that shook until it was strong. She said, Cordelia kept a book, and my neck went hot. After, I asked, the cousin, Mavis, looked at me the way old women look at girls who should have called more. In the house, she said. She wrote down the numbers of the calls. She liked to keep proof she was still here. The detective who became my detective. We were not friends, but we became a team in the way of people who stare at the same wall until the Griffin stepped forward, called me 2 days later from a scene at 1604 where inspectors were changing locks. We found a journal, he said, wedged in the pantry behind a cracked tile. I met him at his desk during the day, shocked by the sun like an animal. He handed me a photocopy. Cordelia's handwriting was the round, pinched script of women who learned on wide rule. Dates, times, names, inspector visit, tea days, little X marks on a calendar sheet drawn in pencil, batteries changed, with marginalia, only replaced one. Said church ladies don't like chirp. Blue pebbles and paper. Phone rings on its own. I tell it my name so it won't forget me. On the last page, June 10th, this. If I am wrong, forgive me. If I am right, tell Ruth at the phone to tell the people in the halls to keep their noise. Hush is how we die. I sat with that sentence in my lap until a detective from another section closed a file cabinet too hard and my body came back into the room. The detective, mine, sat on the edge of his desk like a man who knew better than to move me when I was looking at a moon. Tell me what you hear, he said finally. I hear an old woman who saw, I said, and who knew exactly how to use me. He nodded. I'll get it into Discovery. Can I have a copy? Already made you one, he said. He had known me less than a month and already knew I keep my own proofs. The phones still call at 2:19 sometimes, but not for help, not even for haunting. I think of them as check-ins, a city's way of touching its own pulse. New tenants live at 1604 and 1608 and 1612 now. Toby stayed. She is stubborn, which is another word for alive. And they've put up their own detectors bought with their own money and labeled with their own names on masking tape, like a toddler's lunch. When the landlines ring and I answer, the voices, if there are voices, say things like, just making sure it's still noisy. My answer is always yes. Noise is life. You want a block to be loud enough to irritate a man who owns too many keys. I changed. Like everyone who lives through a siren changes in dumb ways you only notice when you try to fold laundry and end up checking the smoke alarm. I started taking my own tea to family holidays and watching the way my grandma stirs. I put a CO detector in my bedroom even though the radiator is 10,000 years old and water-based and could only kill me by singing in the winter. I told every person I love to buy a kettle and pour their own water and to set their phones to ring loud at night. Not to do not disturb the world out because the world won't remember to disturb back in time. I stopped letting quiet be a compliment. I keep a file in my apartment where I store my work things I'm not supposed to have, my spreadsheet, The obits, the trust paperwork printouts, a photo of the mortise in the pantry tile where Cordelia hid her journal, a photocopy of the last page. Quiet is how we die in a hand that trembles just a little. I keep a teacup in my cabinet that I bought at a thrift on Harford, a chipped thing with blue forget-me-nots, and I've turned it over enough that the glaze has warmed to my fingerprints. Nothing is under the lip. I check anyway, because checking is the way I was born and the way I make sure I'll die later. People ask me, when I let them, if I believe in ghosts. I tell them I believe in rooms and wires and patterns, and the way old women tell the truth in places where no one writes it down. I believe in landlords who wrap murder in care and forms. I believe in nieces who think running a trust means taking what you need and calling it a blessing. I believe in dispatch as a place where the dead sometimes dial because we remember numbers and names when the world would rather forget. If you live in a building where the detectors never chirp and the landlord smiles too hard while carrying a basket you didn't ask for, if your tea tastes like pennies, or your tongue goes numb, or your sleep feels like a well you didn't mean to climb into, call us. Call before you feel silly. Call before the quiet becomes a plan. If your phone rings on its own at 2:19 and an old woman tells you to check under the lip of the cup, do it. If someone tells you the detectors are chirping to be annoying and they will fix it so you can rest, buy your own and make them loud enough to spoil someone's night. If you ever find yourself on East Madison and a man with too many keys tells you he's the help, ask him to tell you the names of the people who lived there before you and listen to how he says them. If his mouth makes the names small, like you can put them in a drawer, call me. I'll sit on my side of the glass under the hum and say your address back to you. I'll send the people with meters and clipboards and warrants. I'll keep the line noisy until morning. And if the landline rings by itself at 2:19 and the woman on the other end says, tell the halls to keep their noise. Go into the hall and bang a pot with a spoon and wake your neighbor and tell them you needed sugar and then share the piece of cake they kept in the fridge because they were lonely. Make the building too loud for anyone to plan sleep with a silica bag. Teach your block to check one another's cups and detectors and mail and batteries. We live or die by noise. I'm not supposed to give advice. I'm supposed to take the next call. But Cordelia used me, and I am proud to have been used. So here's what I tell anyone who asks how to stay alive in a city that can make quiet a weapon. Pour your own tea. Change your own batteries. Keep your own keys. Write down your minutes so the numbers remember you. And be the person who bangs the pot at 2:19. Because some nights, the phones still all ring at once. And when they do, the city sounds like a choir of kitchens. Some voices are gone. Some voices are new. But the number is the same. And the job is the same. And the only way to break a murder that wears a cardigan is to make enough noise to shame it. If you ever hear someone whisper on a line that shouldn't have breath, tell me the taste on your tongue and the time on your stove. I'll know what to do with the first, and I'll know what to do with the second. I'll make it loud. My name is Gabriela Montoya, but everyone at the Bernalillo County Regional Communications Center called me Gabby. I worked nights on the East Pod, just outside Albuquerque, where the desert smells like dust and sun-baked creosote by day and like cooled metal and wet stone after those surprise midnight storms. If you ever dialed 911 around here between 2017 and 2023 because a coyote with mange was pacing your fence line, or because your uncle's blood sugar crashed on the back patio, or because something looked wrong in your headlights out on I-40 and you needed a steady voice to hang your fear on, there's a good chance it was me. Our room never gets fully dark, even at 3 a.m. When the call volume dips just enough to hear yourself chew, the consoles glow a low aquarium blue, and the ceiling panels buzz faintly like bees that forgot how to sleep. Each station arcs like a cockpit. CAD dead center, radio console on a column to the left, Phase 2 mapping on a vertical screen that throws little triangles for units and concentric rings for pings, YLI/ANI for the caller info, the next-gen pane for text, to 911 and TTY, and that endless incident scroller that moves like a news ticker for other people's worst minutes. The vents blow a smell I can only describe as hot pennies when the heat kicks on, and the break room coffee reliably tastes like singed cardboard. That's the backdrop. The hum. The steady. It was October 31st, a Wednesday. The civilians in admin wore cat ears and a skeleton sweater. We on the floor wore department polos like always because the people who call at 2:17 a.m. Don't want to hear a witch's cackle under your breath when you say, "What's the address?" Halloween shifts are a bingo card. Fireworks you're not allowed to call fireworks. Suspicious persons in masks who are just teenagers doing TikTok dances on the wrong porch. Pumpkin carving accidents, drunk uncles, candy scares, and the occasional meth lab that thinks a fog machine will make neighbors shrug at chemical smells. 2341. The first firecracker popped somewhere over the foothills, and on someone else's headset a caller swore it was a gun. 018. 2DV, domestic violence. Calls landed within 5 minutes because alcohol makes old fights put on new costumes. 102. A driver on Eubank swerved to avoid a scarecrow in the road that blinked. We laugh the way dispatchers laugh. Tired, quietly, without mirth, and send a unit anyway because scarecrows don't blink. At 119, the line on my console labeled PRI 01 lit with a green that meant not wireless, not VoIP, landline residential. The ALI populated neatly. Name Ortiz, Daniel, address 6235 Los Bujos NE. A cul-de-sac in a sleepy tract behind a shuttered strip mall. Phase 2 showed the dot stable, not bouncing. The phone delivered the exact tone our old Panasonic at my grandmother's house always made. A little chime, a little throat clear, the sound of an object expecting a person. 911. What is the location of your emergency? I said automatically, even though I already had it. The voice that came back was calm in a way that made the hair stand up on my arms. Not drunk calm, not medicated. Decided. 6235 Los Bujos, he said clearly. My name is Daniel Ortiz. I killed my wife. If you read enough police reports, the word allegedly crawls into your blood. You learn to smooth. Sir, tell me exactly what happened. She came home at 11:10, he said. I heard, underneath, the steady whine of a refrigerator compressor and the second hand of a wall clock that ticked like a metronome. We argued about the porch light. She had turned it off again. I told her, for Halloween you leave it on. It's the rule. She smiled at me like I'd gotten the rules backwards. She said she forgot. She never forgets. She miscut the candy bowl. She always fills it to the same line on the pumpkin bowl, and she overpoured. She put the wrappers in the wrong side of the sink. She put her keys down quietly. Okay, I said, opening a fresh CAD with the kind of hands that already knew I was going to be typing a witness statement into the vein of the city. Is she breathing? No, he said. I stabbed her. I don't know how many times. She bled. It was black. In the corner of my eye, my supervisor, Salazar, moved the way crows move when they see something shiny. One step and then still, head tilted. On the radio, I stomped the foot pedal and felt it click in my ankle. Any unit, priority, possible homicide, 6235 Los Bujos NE. Male caller states he killed wife. No further. Timeout 0119. Unit 344, en route. A voice answered. Keep your hands where officers can see them when they arrive, I told him, because the script keeps us from falling through our own floors. Is anyone else in the house? No, he said thoughtfully. Just her, but I don't think it was her. He said it the way you say, I think it's going to rain. No drama, just correction. What do you mean, Daniel? He took a breath that sounded like he'd learned to breathe by watching someone else do it. She wasn't wearing her ring, he said. She never takes it off in the house. She puts it in the little dish shaped like a hand when she moisturizes because she hates lotion under the band. The dish was clean and dry. Her hands were dry. She smiled wrong. It stopped just before the eyes. She went straight for the drawer with the knives. She stood there facing the wrong way, toward the pantry, not toward the stove, like she'd practiced this kitchen in a different house. Daniel, can you tell me your wife's name? Marisol, he said softly, like a crack opening. But this wasn't Marisol. Do you have any weapons on you now? No, he said. I put the knife in the sink. The sink is ma'am, the sink is black. Secure the area, Salazar said under his breath. Not to me, but to the room, which heard him anyway. I typed. RP states victim bled black. Knife in sink. Pos anomalous. Dispatchers don't get a checkbox for anomalous. You write around it and tell the truth sideways. Unit 344 on scene. The radio popped. Approaching. Copy, I said, then into the phone. Officers are there, Daniel. I want you to put the phone on speaker, step away from the kitchen, and keep your hands visible. He set the handset down hard, and the mic picked up footsteps. Two? No, one set, but hesitating, like shoes trying to remember the house. The door opened. The radio brought the outside in. 344's body cam captured the noise of things becoming real. Sheriff's office. An officer called. "Daniel, come to me. Hands up." "I'm here," Daniel said. I heard his voice in my ear and, a second later, through the officer's mic, like an echo chasing itself. "Hands," 344 said again. Softer, like you do once you decide you're going to live through this. "Hands. Good. Walk backwards. Stop. Down. Thank you. Where is she?" "In the kitchen," Daniel said. "But not she. Copy 1 detained," 344 said to the radio. "We're going to clear." The body cam, reviewed later, burned into my brain since, shows a kitchen that looks like everyone's kitchen. Granite counters trying to pretend they're a rock older than the sun, magnet-cluttered fridge, a pumpkin bowl grinning on the island, a drawer open showing knives like tongues. On the tile by the dishwasher, a shape. Female. Supine. Arms wrong. The stab marks are not the worst part. TV makes you think blood is the worst part. The worst part was the color. Thick, tar-like, black that reflected the LED ceiling light in oily sheens. No red, no dark cherry iron slick, no brown edge drying. Black like new asphalt. Black like the road wants to keep you. The air above it had that hot penny smell turned rotten, like something sweet hidden under metal. "Dispatch," 344 said, breathing changed. "I need EMS code 3. We have a female, unknown. Bleeding, black substance. No visible respiration." "Copy EMS emergent," I said. My mouth was making shapes and my hands were doing the right things. My brain had stepped slightly to the left of my skull to watch. "Do not touch the liquid," another voice said on the radio. Not 344, not his partner. "Calm. Male." The channel ID flashed a talk group I didn't recognize, a federal interop I saw once during a wildfire. "Repeat, do not touch the exudate. Do not allow it to contact mucous membranes. Ventilate if possible. Identify yourself," Salazar snapped, jabbing the override to open a private line. The voice didn't answer. The channel went quiet a beat too long. Then 344, a different small man's voice, said, "Copy caution." We later learned that's how they do it when they want a guide without announcing. I didn't know who they were yet, only that they were listening to a channel I hadn't invited them to. EMS arrived in 3 minutes 40 seconds, fast enough to make you cry. The medics stood over the woman, Marisol or the not Marisol, and did calculations dispatchers never see. They measured the pupils, fixed. They tried a sternal rub, no response. One medic said, "My God," in a tone of reverence and disgust. He had his gloved finger near her mouth and pulled it away with a jerk. A string of black clung between glove and lip and snapped like oil. He changed gloves so fast the latex squealed. They started to move her for pronouncement, and she slipped. Not her, the surface of her, like something slick separating from something solid. The medic swore softly and looked at his partner. He didn't finish. "Pronounce," the partner asked gently. He nodded. "Time of death 1:34. On the recording from the kitchen camera, you can see the smoke detector near the pantry blink every 5 seconds, regular as a heartbeat. Later, when they pulled it down, they found the battery had been removed and replaced with a plastic spacer painted copper, so it looked like a battery in bad light. Someone had staged safety into silence. They bagged Daniel and transported him before the media got hungry. I stayed on the line until 344 said clear and my little triangles moved. Then I pulled the call recording, tagged it, and added a notation for the watch commander. Unusual fluid, caution. Salazar stood behind me, not touching my chair the way a father stands near a toddler near stairs, hands hovering, resisting. The next morning, an email hit the supervisor distro from an address that looked like it was made of squares. Indio, 10 at FBI. Gov. Subject, request for audio/transcripts. 6235 Los Bujos NE. The body was extremely polite. Please provide recordings and logs. Preserve for potential federal investigation. Thank you, etc. There was no case number and no agent signature. When Salazar called the field office number, the person who answered didn't recognize the address and transferred him twice until a woman who introduced herself as ASAC Evers said, mildly, "Send it." Her voice had the texture of a bulletproof vest. "We sent it." The room tried to reset. Adrenaline burns fast and leaves you cold. At 8:20, while I was packing my bag, the admin line rang. That line is for tow yards, hospital charge nurses, utility company emergency centers. I answered reflexively. "Communications, Montoya." "Ms. Montoya," the caller said pleasantly. "Good morning." "Male, mid-30s to 50. Accent, none." The caller ID showed private. In the background, a hum that sounded like my own console hum in a recording. "Yes. You handled the Ortiz residence with admirable calm," he said. "We're grateful. Please advise your patrol units that product liquefies faster at altitude. They should bag early." I stared at the handset as if my look could turn it into something else. "Who is this?" "We go by different things depending on who asks," he said amiably. "Today, NDU-10. Tomorrow, behavioral anomalies support. Sometimes, nothing you can FOIA. We prefer clean scenes. Thank you for helping." "People died," I said before my professionalism caught up to me. "Yes," he said. "That's how we find them." "Find who?" I asked. He let a second pass, the kind that lets you hear your own blood. "Replacements," he said gently. "We believe Mr. Ortiz killed a replacement. The black exudate is a temporary compromise of the interface. Please advise your EMTs to never suction the mouth on a suspected replacement without a physical barrier in place." And then he hung up like he'd said, "Have a nice day," and left me in fluorescent light with the smell of dusty vents and a note in my chest like a piano string. You don't get to keep weirdness to yourself in dispatch. It moves along the grapevine like an electric bug. By night shift, Marisol Ortiz had become the woman with the black blood. The officers who'd been at the scene had showered twice and still said they smelled pennies. The medic who'd pronounced her had told his captain he was fine and then gone to the parking lot and thrown up quietly into the landscaping. A tech in the evidence lab texted her dispatcher friend that a swab from the sink came back protein positive, but heme negative. Blood, that wasn't. The swab of what pooled under the jaw read like melanin markers turned up to 1,000. The coroner's office logged the body as Jane Doe, condition unstable, and moved the tray to a cold room with a floor drain. You don't sleep after that. You research. You go places you shouldn't. I searched the KOAT archive, the journal, the local r/Albuquerque threads, the menace blogs with names like Weird Wide and Southwest Sprawl and Erie 505. Most was trash, the same paragraph of rumor repeated until it becomes a shape. But in 2019, there was a string of posts in a nurse's Facebook group, later deleted, where RNs at UNM Hospital warned each other not to accept a patient's blood sample from ER Room 6 if it came unlabeled after a certain traveling doctor rotated through. "Ink blood," one wrote. "Smells sweet like rotten candy." Comments turned into sarcasm, then into horror when someone posted a scrub selfie with a brown-black stain on the cuff and the caption, "It won't wash out." The account went private the next day. I found a PDF, a poor scan of an academic poster from a pathology conference, titled Non-Hemoglobin Iron-Independent Pigmentation in Postmortem Fluid, a case series. The authors were two pathologists from Flagstaff and a third whose institutional affiliation had been redacted so sloppily you could still read Quantico in the white box. The fluids in their case series exhibited eumelanin saturation orders of magnitude higher than baseline skin or hair and decreased oxygen carrying capacity. The text recommended isolation of first responders and early federal notification. The references cited no one and nothing. It looked like it had been stapled to itself. At 2:07 3 nights later, a call came from a public payphone outside a shuttered Allsops on Central, one of the few payphones that still takes quarters in this strip of desert. The address on the ALI read unknown. The line hissed like an old radio. Then a woman's voice. "Please don't hang up. They won't answer if you call them." "He answers. He'll say he's from a unit." "He's not. He's not my husband." "Okay," I said. "What's your name?" "No name," she said hoarsely. "Names make it easy. I'm calling because he's wearing him. He got it wrong. His left ear crease. He put it on backwards." "Where are you?" "I move," she whispered. "The ones of us who know we move." "Who is he?" She inhaled like the desert does when a storm cloud passes without rain. "He works for you," she said. "He gives talks to church groups. He puts his cap on your toddlers. He tells widows that God made him a shepherd." He's been a captain longer than captains get to be captains. The hair on the back of my neck felt like it had pulled roots up to listen. We had one captain who did the circuit with church groups and community centers. He'd been a sergeant in '09 when everyone else was playing musical chairs, then promoted to captain and somehow stayed, which doesn't happen unless you're made of Teflon or the city forgets where it put the ladder. His name was Captain J.R. Calhoun. Everyone called him Cap Cal. Square jaw. Eagle pin he wore because his son had gone Army. Good with babies and microphones. The chief kept him for cameras. The troops tolerated him because he brought cinnamon rolls to briefing. He took my husband on I-25, the woman said. We were an inch from drowning in air, and I pulled him back, and he gasped, and then it was him. The real him. For a second, and then somebody else wearing most of him said, I'll take it from here. And now Cap Cal is the one who visits me in my kitchen and asks if the locks always click like that, and if the back door ever sticks. What's your husband's name? I asked. I can't help if I don't know. Silence. Then, do you remember that house off Rio Bravo where the windows were papered from the inside and the mailbox was full and the dog food went stale? She didn't wait for me to answer. He was the one who knocked every week. He took the dog when the pound wouldn't. He returned the deposit after the landlord kept it. He carried groceries for the old lady across. He does not stand and watch while people go out and come back wrong. Her breath rattled. But he went out, and he didn't come all the way back. What does go out mean? I asked. My voice had become something I used on suicidal callers in February. Like unconscious? Like cardiac arrest? Died, she said simply. He died for a little, and then something else came in wearing his shell and said, I'll fix this. And then it fixed him into usefulness for a man who wears a happy captain suit. The line clicked and died. The payphone at Allsup's had eaten someone else's quarters once again. I typed it into CAD anyway. Female caller, public phone, states capped. Calhoun, wearing, persons post-death, refers to replacements. It looked ridiculous in that font. It also looked like a thread. The next afternoon, before my shift, I took a slow drive past 6235 Los Bujos. The pumpkin bowl had been cleared. The porch light was on in the day, a classic mistake for people whose house is now a memorial. I parked 2 blocks down and opened my laptop to a thread a friend in records had slid across a private channel with no subject line. A list of incidents from the last 3 years flagged by EMS as ROSC. Return of spontaneous circulation after cardiac arrest. Normally, we high-five those cases. It's magic. CPR works. Narcan works. Luck works. But the list was long, too long, and clustered around certain intersections, San Mateo and Gibson, I-25 and Rio Bravo, Wyoming and Constitution, Eubank and Central. Places where a certain community policing captain liked to do photo ops. In the narrative of one, a paramedic had written, ROSC after 3 minutes asystole. Point sits up, says, I'll take it from here, in a voice unlike baseline per spouse. In another, ROSCX2, unusual pigmentation at oral cavity. In a third, ROSC, point becomes agitated and requests to speak to Captain Calhoun. I stared until the words got soft. When I got to work, there was a briefing notice on the whiteboard. Officer safety update. Unknown hazardous substance. See Cap Cal at 2100 hours in training room B. I took a picture of it. Salazar raised an eyebrow and didn't say no. At 2100 hours, I slipped into the back of training room B with 2 dispatchers from fire and 1 from city police who always smelled like peppermint gum. Cap Cal stood up front in a polo with the department crest and that eagle pin, smiling just enough to be broadcast safe. On the screen, a slide titled Field Contamination Risks, Halloween Edition, in Comic Sans because of course. He talked fentanyl, always a scare around Halloween. He showed a picture of rainbow pills that KOAT loves, and actual techs roll their eyes at. He reminded everyone to wear gloves. He made a joke about monsters that men think makes them sound approachable when they're choosing to pretend they don't know what's going on. Then he clicked to a slide that made my breath stop. A still from the Ortiz kitchen body cam, cropped to the torso, black slick on ceramic tile. Caption, unknown exudate, do not touch. Is that Marisol Ortiz? A young officer asked, not yet old enough to carry his cynicism in his shoulders. An unrelated case, Cap Cal said smoothly. Point is, gloves, eye protection, Mask if anything smells sweet. If you see black fluids instead of blood, don't attempt rescue breathing. CPR with barrier only. Call it in. We'll send a specialized unit. Which unit? I asked out loud from the back, without meaning to. Heads turned. Cal's eyes slid toward me like magnets obey rules. He smiled the way you smile at a child who asked about where babies come from in church. NDU-10, he said, savored the letters like a fancy olive. They'll help. I watched him closer after that. I started noticing little wrongnesses like Valentina, my best friend on C shift, says I always do when I get a hunch. Nothing dramatic. Things like the tiny fold in his left earlobe was missing on Tuesdays and back on Thursdays. Things like his voice got a hair deeper when he walked past the cold room at the morgue and then went back to normal by the snack machines. Things like he always stood with his right foot slightly forward even though the academy trains you neutral. Until one night at a ROSC scene when the firefighter with the life pack said, "We're losing him," and Cal took one step left and the room seemed to bend toward him like heat shimmer. We had 2 more black blood calls in a week. One out on a frontage road near Laguna. A husband insisted he'd struck a deer, and the thing lying in the ditch had fingers stitched together under sleeves like a marionette gone wrong. The other at a motel on Central where a man we all knew by first name for his habit of borrowing lobby coffee collapsed, then sat up 8 minutes later, blinked, and said, to no one, "Not this one," in a voice that sounded like 2 people singing badly in unison. Each time, a soft voice on the radio slipped in to say, "Units, NDU, 10 en route." Each time, Cal arrived just before the NAU, 10 Suburban did, smiled, and told the spouses gentle things about miracles. On the 9th day, NDU, 10 called me directly. Not the faceless voice. An agent with a name and a weight. Evers. The ASAC. She didn't say ESAC because people who can wear letters don't have to show you in every sentence. "We need a favor, Ms. Montoya," she said. Her voice was dry. "Texas or learn neutral. We've been working a series across District 5, Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas, parts of the Navajo Nation. We think your captain is involved." "Involved how?" I asked. "We believe he is recruiting individuals to host replacement biology," she said, as if she were ordering a sandwich, "because you can't say some sentences with flair and get away whole." In at least 4 instances, he arrived at near-death scenes and facilitated longer occupancy than the body could withstand naturally. Occupancy. The word tasted like drywall dust. "Call it what you want," she said. "They bleed black, they dissolve when they decompose, and in between they are very convincing. They're cooperative. They do rides-alongs with chaplains, they run food banks, they take useful jobs. They remember enough of the host's memories to pass for a while, and enough of the things above ours to make you feel like you're catching up. They do not like sea level. They like altitude. The chemistry runs better. We believe your captain learned to ask for them." "You're telling me Captain Calhoun is a trafficker," I said, and my voice was both mine and not. "I'm telling you he is not what your HR file says," she said. "I'm telling you he has 2 Department of Justice emails with 2 near-identical names. One for public events, one that bounces to us. I'm telling you he inserts himself at scenes where he shouldn't be, and that the families he visits report bad dreams, and then call you from payphones saying he wants their husbands back." I didn't speak for 3 heartbeats. "What do you need?" "We need you to hold him in a place without Vince long enough for us to arrive," she said. "We need you to do that without saying why." "How?" "Call him," she said simply. "Tell him there's a family in your lobby who needs a photo op. He'll come." The lobby of our building is a slab of tile and a couple of chairs and a vending machine that eats dollars from new hires. No vents worth the name. No drain. Nowhere for a liquid to run except into your shoes. The idea of making a man I had smiled at for 6 years dissolve in our lobby passed over me like a cold wind. The idea of letting him walk back out did worse. At 2211, under the hum and the fluorescent panels and the smell of someone's over-microwave pozole, I dialed Cal from the admin line. "Calhoun," he said. He always answered on the second ring like a man who wants to sound busy without sounding vulnerable. "Captain, this is Montoya on East Pod," I said. "We have a family in the lobby, the Ortiz family. They said you said you'd check in." He inhaled, slow, happy. "Be right down," he said. I told Salazar. He looked at me like I'd placed a lit candle in a box of matches and said, "We'll do this soft." He arranged 3 patrol officers, not rookies, in places that looked like lobby loitering. He had our building security turn off the HVAC so the lobby air went fat and still. He told Valentina to keep the CAD open and to keep her palms flat on the desk like a person whispering to a dog. He told me to stand by the vending machine and breathe like I wasn't going to throw up. Cap Cal came through the 2 sets of glass doors at 22:23, hair perfect, polo crisp, a smile on his face like there was a camera in the exit sign. "Where are they?" he asked warmly, and then looked around when he realized the lobby was empty. His smile did not falter. It stretched just 1 tooth wider and a half-inch too long. He looked at me, and a thing flickered behind his eyes the way heat does on asphalt. The officer to my left adjusted his weight, and the sound it made on tile was huge in the quiet air. "They're running late," I said. "They asked if you could stay." He tilted his head. His left ear crease was there. His right earlobe looked thinner, and for one catastrophic second I thought about a person trying on a mask that didn't fit and cutting pieces until it lay flush. He took a single step toward me and stopped, air thick without the vent push. "You turned off the air," he said in a voice that had dropped a scale. "Who told you to do that? Ms. Montoya?" "Policy," I offered weakly. He smiled for real then, and it was wrong. Too many teeth, too little eyes. "No policy on earth says turn off the air," he said, and glanced at the ceiling, at the border between tile and duct, like a man glancing at a door he suddenly can't find. The outer doors opened and 4 people came in moving like pieces of furniture, heavy and committed. 2 were in plain clothes with small badges clipped inside their belts. 2 in the kind of windbreakers that get made fun of on TV. The woman in the lead I recognized by her voice. "Evers." She nodded at me once, and then looked at Cap Cal like a surgeon looks at a chest before the first cut. "Captain Calhoun," she said pleasantly. "We need you to come with us." "You and who?" he asked, smiling, because he always knew where cameras were, and this is what a nice man says when strangers make theater. "In view 10, she said. "The real one." He regarded her. The smile drained like heat into ground. He tried to step back, toward the doors, and Salazar turned the electromagnet lock without touching it, because there's a button under console for that. The doors didn't open. Cap Cal's cheeks, the color we show the world, looked looser, like a face exhaling. He put a hand on the door frame and left a faint gray print like grease. "This is not your jurisdiction," he said softly. "It is now," Evers said. "You've been busy." He looked down at my hands on my console where I had them, because I didn't know where else to put them. My nails are short as a rule. The half-moons were white. He smiled at me, and then the smile slid, not off his lips, through them, like something wet passing through a filter. I will tell you the rest the way a person tells a lightning strike after watching a tree explode. Fast, clipped, wrong-sized. He moved. The officers moved. The air did that thing air does when a pressure change thinks about happening. Cap Cal's right eye, just for a blink, went a shade darker than human. When Evers raised a small spray bottle, like women carry for rose water, he ducked, but not fast enough. The mist touched his cheek and beaded. The beads turned brown-black and then ran toward his jaw as if pulled. The skin under them puckered like plastic near fire. He snarled, not human and not animal, and his voice split like a double track. "We're not finished here." "You are," Evers said, and sprayed again, more a line than a mist. It hit his other cheek. The black came fast, slick out of pores like every hair had become a spigot. He clutched at his face and left streaks. The smell hit thin, sweet and metal, and a high note like a broken battery. One of the officers gagged, controlled, swallowed. He stumbled toward the door like a man in a pool. The lobby floor under his shoes went black slick, and someone, not me, said, "Watch it, slip." He sagged against the glass and left 2 handprints like tar. Evers stepped close enough to break a restraining order and put the spray against his neck in a steady pulse. Her face was absolutely calm. The black sheeted. It poured. Cap Cal looked at me one last time, and I swear to you, this is the part one didn't write in any official place. His eyes were a good man's for half a second, and he mouthed, "I'm sorry." Then whatever he had been, whatever wore him, let go. He collapsed into himself. Not melted like wax, folded like wet paper collapsing into a dense dark mass. The officers stepped back. The lobby filled with the smell of a burned candy store and a dead battery and hot copper all at once. I had my fist against my mouth. Someone turned the HVAC back on, and the air moved, and the smell moved, and Evers said, without looking at anyone, "Don't. Leave it." They bagged the mass, not in a body bag. In a line drum liner you could palletize. It left a stain on our tile like an oil change gone wrong. Maintenance came at dawn with a machine that screeched and a shampoo that made the lobby smell like old oranges. For weeks after, if the light hit the tile just right, you could see 2 handprints on the glass like illusions, like fingerprints pressed to your eyes. They told the papers nothing. Cap Cal, retired for health reasons, said the mayor at a podium with 2 flags and a succulents arrangement someone thought would humanize government. The field office put out a statement about helping local partners address hazardous substances concerns. The Ortiz case, Daniel, went weird. He confessed to killing his wife. The state charged him with manslaughter and then spent a year trying to explain to a jury why the autopsy report said non-human tissue characteristics. His public defender did their job too well and made a mockery of science. The jury hung. The DA took a plea. He'll be out before I finish paying off my Corolla. As for NU-10, they exist when they pick up, then they don't. When we get a black call now, they don't even use a voice. They send a little tone through the radio, a high beep like a camera flash. It makes your molars ring. Then a Yukon rolls like a black toaster on wheels, and people in jeans unload cases with yellow tapes and white labels and ask politely where your mop sink is. The woman from the payphone? She called once more. The ELI said unknown again. It was raining, and I could hear it flatten on the metal hood over the booth. "He's gone," she said. "Your husband?" "No," she said. "The captain. I saw him on TV. They made it look like a vacation." She blew her nose like she was still learning how to own a face. "There are others. Nice ones. Quiet ones. They don't like what he did either. They don't like what we do. But sometimes they make things softer." "What do you want me to tell people?" I asked. I don't know why I asked. I just did. Some nights the job makes you ask strangers to rewrite policy. She thought. When she spoke, it was slow, as if reading from a sticky note. "Tell the ones who come back right that the black will come out of their pores when they're about to tell a good lie. Tell their spouses to look at their ears and their teeth. Everyone gets one thing wrong. Tell them to ask a question only the body would know, like which tile in the shower cracked the week before, and if the answer is 2 tiles, call you. And the ones who don't come back right, make noise," she said. "Monsters like quiet. Men who use monsters like cameras." She hung up. I changed after that. Not dramatically. I didn't start wearing a cross or storing holy water in my trunk. I changed in dumb ways that save lives 1 inch at a time. I carry an extra barrier mask for CPR and a spare for the panicking cousin. I tape a CO detector under my desk because Cordelia from another story is always in my head now telling me quiet is poison. I started reading the ear again, the little folds and scars in the people I love, because I want to recognize them. I look at rings and keys in the side of the sink where they place things without thinking, and I watch for wrong. I keep a folder that I shouldn't, printouts of the ROSC cases with "I'll take it from here" underlined, a screen cap of the NU-10 email with the square address, a blurry frame from the lobby security camera showing Cap Cal's last real human half-smile before the black came like a tide, a photocopy of a pathology abstract with the word eumelanin circled and altitude written in my own pen next to it. On nights when the calls stack and stack and stack and the hum in the room starts sounding like a note, I take the folder out and look at the handprints on the glass in the photo and ask myself whether I did the right thing standing where I stood with the vending machine buzzing and ever spraying whatever it was that did whatever it did. The answer the room gives me depends on the day. Here's what I know and what I will put my name to. Not all of them are predators. Some of them, replacements, occupants, whatever word you can say without swallowing blood, beg us to stop someone else. I have calls logged where a woman spoke in 3 accents in 1 minute and said, "Please tell him to stop collecting us." I have a forum screenshot from a paramedic list where a guy in Denver says black bleeding runs a half step faster at 5,000 feet, and a guy in Tucson replies, "We almost never see it." And a third guy in Santa Fe posts a photo of a glove with a stain that looks like a galaxy. Maybe Cal was a guy who thought he found a way to save people and stepped into a river he didn't know the depth of. Maybe he was a predator dressed as a chaplain. It's both truer and crueler to say he was a man who liked cameras and admiration and learned the fastest way to get both was to be the one who dials a number no one else has. He dialed it too often. The number dialed him back. If you ever find yourself there, on a freeway shoulder, in a motel, in your kitchen with the porch light on, the pumpkin bowl full to the wrong line, and someone you love comes back from that thin gray place between breaths and blinks at you wrong and says, "I'll take it from here," like they borrowed the sentence from a script, do not panic. Do CPR with a barrier. Let the medics do their work. Photograph their ears the next day when everyone's calm. Ask them a question only their body would know, not their mind. Which tooth aches when the weather changes? Which tile is loose? What sound the dryer makes on the last cycle? If they get it right, make them soup and let them sleep, and do not tell them they scared you. If they get it wrong, and then say, "I'll take it from here," in that flat way, call me. We will send people who will not laugh at you. We will lock the doors and turn off the vents and make a ring on the tile that keeps me awake some nights and might keep you alive. I still pick up the admin line when it rings with private, even when I should let it go to voicemail. Sometimes it's Evers, needing an address we already gave. Sometimes it's nobody. Once it was a male voice I recognized instantly saying, "We liked you better when you thought you were saving people." I told the empty hum, "We liked you better when you kept your hands off our dead." Then I turned up the volume on my headset until the buzz of the room filled me like a song with no words. If you're listening to this at 3 a.m., hear me. Most of the time, the person you love is exactly who they say they are, and miracles are just CPR and luck and love arriving on time. But on the nights that smell like pennies and candy, on the nights when a man with too much smile shows up just a minute too fast at a scene he had no reason to know about, on the nights your sink runs black where it should run red, trust your ears. Trust how they place their keys. Trust the one thing we all do the same way every day without noticing it. If that one thing is wrong, you might be looking at a mask with a very good seam. And if you ever hear someone on a freeway shoulder say, "I'll take it from here," and you can't tell if they mean it like a blessing or a theft, keep them talking like you'd keep a baby breathing. Then call. I'll be at a desk under a hum, counting breaths and pulling a thread through the night until the world hangs back on it.